Hello, friends. Today I am here with a new book named How I Taught My Grandmother to Read and Other Stories by renowned writer Sudha Murthy. Chapter 1, How I Taught My Grandmother to Read. When I was a girl about of 12, I used to stay in a village in North Karnataka with my grandparents. Those days the transport system was not very good, so we used to get the morning paper only in the afternoon. The weekly magazine was used to come one day late. All of us would eagerly wait for the bus which used to come with papers, weekly magazines and post. At that time, Triveni was a very popular writer in the Kannada language. She was a wonderful writer. Her style was easy to read and very convincing. Her stories usually dealt with complex psychological problems in the lives of ordinary people and were always interesting. Unfortunately for Kannada literature, she died very young. Even now, after 40 years, people continue to appreciate her novels. One of her novels, The Kashi Yatre, was appearing as a serial in the Kannada weekly Karmavir then. It is the story of an old lady and her ardent desire to go to Kashi or Varanasi. Most Hindu believe that going to Kashi and worshipping Lord Vishweshwar is the ultimate punya. This old lady also believed this, and her struggle to go there was described in that novel. In the story, there was also a young orphan girl who falls in love, but there was no money for the wedding. In the end, the old lady gives away all her savings without going to Kashi. She says the happiness of this orphan girl is more important than worshipping Lord Vishweshwar at Kashi. My grandmother, Krishtakka, never went to school, so she could not read. Every Wednesday, the magazine would come and I would read the next episode of this story to her. During that time, she would forget all her work and listen with the greatest concentration. Later, she could repeat the entire text by heart. My grandmother, too, never went to Kashi and she identified herself as the novel's protagonist. So, than anybody else, she was one most interested knowing what happened next in the story and used to insist that I read the serial out to her. After hearing what happened in next Kashi Yatre, she would join her friends at the temple courtyard where we children would also gather to play hide and seek. She would discuss the latest episode with the friends. At that time, I never understood why there was so much debate about the story. Once I went for a wedding with my cousins to neighboring village. Those days a wedding was a great event. We children enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. Would eat and play endlessly, savoring the freedom because all the elders were busy. I went for a couple of days but ended staying for a week. When I came back to my village, I saw my grandmother in tears. I was surprised for I had never seen her crying in the most difficult situation. What had happened? I was worried. Avva, is everything alright? Are you okay? I used to call her Avva, which means mother in Kannada, spoken in North Karnataka. She nodded but did not reply. I did not understand and we forgot about it. In the night, after dinner, we were sleeping in the open terrace of the house. It was a summer night and there was a full moon. Avva came and sat next to me. Her affectionate hand touched my forehead. I realized she wanted to speak. I asked her, "What is the matter?" When I was a young girl, I lost my mother. There was nobody to look after me. My father was a busy man and got married again. In those days, people didn't consider education essential for girls, so I never went to school. I got married very young and had children. I became very busy. Later, I had grandchildren and always felt so much happiness in cooking and feeding all of you. At times, I used to regret not going to school, so I made sure that my children and grandchildren studied well. I could not understand why my 62 years old grandmother was telling me, a 12-year-old, the story of her life in the middle of the night. But I knew I loved her immensely and there had some reason why she was talking to me. I looked at her face. It was unhappy and her eyes were filled with tears. She was a good looking lady who was always smiling. Even today, I can't forget the worried expression on her face. I leaned forward and held her hand. Avva, don't cry. What is the matter? Can I help you in any way? Yes, I need your help. You know, when you were away, Karmavir as came as usual, and I opened the magazine. I saw the pictures that could accompanies the story of Kashi Yatre, and I could not understand anything that was written. Many times I rubbed my hand over the page, wishing they could understand what was written. But I knew it was not possible. If only I was educated enough. I waited eagerly for you to return. I felt you would come early and read for me. I even thought of going to village and asking you to read for me. I could have asked somebody in the village, but I was too embarrassed to do so. I felt so very dependent and helpless. We are well off, but what use is money when I can't be independent? I did not know what to answer. Avva continued. I have decided I want to learn the Kannada alphabet from tomorrow onwards. I will work very hard. I will keep Saraswati Puja day during Dasahara as deadline. That day I should be able to read a novel on my own. I want to be independent. I saw the determination on her face, yet I laughed at her. Avva, at this age of 62, you want to learn the alphabet? All your hairs are grey, your hands are wrinkled, you wear spectacles, and you work so much in the kitchen. Childishly, I made the fun of her, but she just smiled. For a good cause, if you are determined, you can overcome any obstacle, and I will work hard than anybody, but I will do it. For learning, there is no age bar. The next day onwards, I started my tuition. Avva was a wonderful student. The amount of homework she did was amazing. She could read, repeat, write, and recite. I was her only teacher and she was my first student. Little did I know then one day I would become a teacher in computer science and teach hundreds of students. The Dasahara festival came as usual. Secretly, I bought Kashi Yatre, which had been published novel at that time. My grandmother called me to the puja place and made me sit down on a stool. She gave me the gift of a frock material. Then she did something very unusual. She bent down and touched my feet. I was surprised and taken aback. Elders never touch the feet of youngsters. We have always touched the feet of gods, elders, and teachers. We consider them as a mark of respect. It is a great tradition, but today the reverse had happened. It was not correct. She said, I am touching the feet of a teacher, not my granddaughter. A teacher who taught me so well with so much affection that I can read any novel confidently in a short period of time. Now I am independent. It is my duty to respect a teacher. Is it not written in our scriptures that a teacher should be respected irrespective of gender and age? I did return namaskar by touching her feet and gave my gift to the first student. She opened it and read immediately the title Kashi Yatre by Triveni and the publisher's name. I knew that my student had passed with flying colors. Chapter 2, Books for at least one library. I come from a middle class teacher's family. In my family, as with many other families of teachers, books and knowledge were considered to be more important than money. In our village, I still remember the way people respected my grandfather. He was certainly not the richest man. He used to sit in front of our house on a mat below a shady banyan tree. He always held a book in his hand. In the evening, people would come to him for his advice. Even the richest man, when passing by, would greet him respectfully. I asked him once, why should be a teacher respected? He smiled and told me a story. It seems some friends of Arjuna, the mighty warrior in Mahabharata, asked him why he gave so much respect to his teacher Dronacharya. Drona was not as rich as Arjuna and had never ruled any kingdom, but Arjuna would always sit at his feet respectfully. When asked why, it seems Arjuna replied, in the life where everything perishes over a time, whether it's a diamond, beauty, gold, or even land. Only one thing withstand is destruction, it is knowledge. The more you give, the more you get. A teacher gives knowledge to students, and I consider him as the richest person. That is the reason teacher is respected, not for his riches, but because he is the source of knowledge. As a child, the first expedition I ever made was outside my home was to the village library building with my grandfather. The library was situated in a small two-storied structure. There was a shop on the ground floor and on the first floor was the library. A big banyan tree stood next to the building. There was a cement platform under it. In Kannada, we call it katte. In the evening, all the elders of the village would sit here. My grandfather was one of them. I would accompany him and he would go sit on the platform after dropping me at the first floor. It was the first of many libraries I was to enter. There were cupboards with glass panes that one could read the titles of the books easily. Newspapers and weeklies were piled on neatly. Tables and chairs were laid out for the people to sit and read. There was absolute silence. I started reading children's books there, used to be absorbed in them until my grandfather would call me to go home. Years passed and I became girl of 12 years. By the time I had finished reading almost all the books in that village library. At that time I used to feel bored going to library as there were not many few books. But still I accompanied my old grandfather to the banyan tree. One such evening, we were coming back after our outing. I was feeling particularly bored with the library that day. It was dark and the street lights were blinking. My grandfather could not see too well, so I was leading him by his hand. Suddenly, he asked me, I will recite a half poem and will you complete it? This is a well known poem. I said I would try. We often played these games. I had learned many poems like this. He says, if I have wings, I immediately answered without blinking my eyes. I would go to the neighboring village library and read more books. My grandfather stopped in surprise. He said, will you repeat it? I repeated, I will go to the neighboring village library and read many more books. He laughed and said, what an unusual way to complete the poem. Do you know the original poem? Yes, I know. If I have wings, I will fly in the vast blue skies. I will see beautiful places. I will meet great people. I will search for hidden treasures. My grandfather kept quiet. When we reached home, he sat down on a mat and called me. He was tired but looked very happy. He took my little hand into his and said, do you know, there was a great man called Andrew Carnegie in USA. He was a billionaire who lived in the century back. He willed all his wealth not to his children, but to build library buildings in as many villages as possible. I have not seen America, but it seems library you see in any village is invariably built using Andrew Carnegie's money. I do not know how long will I live, but today I realized how much you love for books from the way you completed the poem. Promise me, when you grow up, if you have more money than you need, you will buy books for at least one library. It was a cold winter night. I still remember the warmth of his large hand in mine. He was old and his hands had become hard and wrinkled writing thousands of lines on the blackboard with chalk every day. We were not rich as Carnegie, but certainly my grandfather had the richest of experience of knowledge. Later in my life, I became well off. I remember my promise of buying books for library. Today, though Infosys, we have given books to 10,000 such libraries. Chapter 3 Salam Abdul Kalam. I have been writing columns for a number of newspapers and magazines for a while now. One of them was Week magazine. Writing columns is a not easy job. One has to keep coming up with interesting anecdotes to write about. Sometimes the incident is so nice you feel like writing more, but you have to be careful about the word limit. Sometimes you don't get any ideas at all, and though the deadline may be nearing, only very few gifted people can write regular columns for a long time. Once I wrote a column for Week magazine on the role of information technologies in people's lives. It was called IT Divide. It was based on a true incident that once happened to me. Soon after the column appeared, one morning I called a call from Delhi. The operator said, Shri Abdul Kalam wants to talk to you. That time Abdul Kalam was Principal Scientific Secretary to Government of India. I have never met him personally till then. I had only read about him in the papers and seen him on TV. Of course, I started wondering why a person of his stature would want to talk an ordinary person like me. We had nothing in common. It would be like meeting a Himalayan peak and a peak of Ankal Hill, which is a small town of Hubli in North Karnataka. When Abdul Kalam came online, I said, Sir, there is a mistake by the operator. Perhaps you want to speak to my husband Narayan Murthy. I knew Murthy knew Mr. Kalam. From the other end, a soft, affectionate voice replied, Vanakkam, there is no absolute mistake. I told the operator to connect to you only. I was thrilled. Sir, you don't know me, but I know a lot about you. I have read about your life in the book of Wings of Fire. But I do know about you reading columns. I read Anand Vikatan regularly where you talk about your dreams and your struggles. Today, when I read IT Divide in the week, I laughed and laughed. You have written on a topic that is such a humorous way. I called my colleagues at office and told them to read the column. Normally, whenever your column appears, I read the last paragraph first because it contains the gist. Then I read the remaining portion as when I get time. That time, the best compliment was received. When I write, I always think of the end first and then start beginning. Kalam seemed to have suggested that in no time. I have heard some people that he is extremely simple, wears only white and blue shirts and slippers. Soon I got to know about this exaggeration. After our talk on the phone, I met him several times. Till today, the more often I meet him, the more I am convinced about the essential simplicity of the man. Any interaction with him is a joy and I always look forward to it. I met him for the first time in the Bangalore. He sent me word that he wanted to see me though he had packed a schedule. I was waiting for him in a room when he came in looking cool in spite of a long tough day. For a while we talked about the literature and human qualities. He asked me in chaste Tamil, how you come know such good Tamil? No sir, I replied. I can't speak Tamil but I understand. My translator Mr. Arokia Velu is an excellent translator. The credit for what appears in Anandavikatan should go to him. As we chatted, a man without a prior appointment wanted to enter. Kalam's security personnel were reluctant to let him enter. Finally, Mr. Kalam said, Please allow him. It doesn't matter, he might have come from a long distance. A middle aged man entered the room along with a photographer. He was holding a huge album and a bag. He told Kalam, Sir, I own this institution, and kept the album in front of him. Please come for our prize distribution day. It will be a great honor for all of us. Kalam looked at a few pages of the album and said, I am short of time, so I will not be able to make it. May God bless the children. Then the man requested for a photograph with Kalam, so which he agreed immediately. The gentleman took a pink colored shawl from his bag and told the photographer to take while he was laying the shawl on Kalam's shoulder. The photograph was duly taken and Kalam thanked him and continued talking to me. But my attention was still on the man. I noticed that he took the shawl and walked out of room. I could not control my anger. Sir, he has taken the shawl which he presented to you. Kalam smiled at me and said, It does not matter, I don't need any of them. Probably he needs it. Each time I meet him, I am amazed at his straightforward behavior and his secular outlook. He has a compassionate heart which particularly loves all children. After that meeting, whenever I was in Chennai, I would see him in the chamber in Anna University where he was teaching. We would talk about many issues, the main one about being education, particularly in the rural areas. He is extremely grateful to his children, teachers, and holds them in highest respect. Once I was sharing my experience in Chandipur, Orissa, and a lesson I learned from a young fisher boy called Javed. He was a poor schoolboy who helped his mother sell the crabs. For an entire day, he received only 5 rupees. Yet, he was happy and enthusiastic. When I asked him how he could remain so optimistic, he said, It is better to be worn out than to be rusted. As soon as I told him, Kalam wrote Javed's word down a piece of paper and exclaimed, What a great piece of advice it was! He told me he liked Orissa immensely and he had spent many years in that state doing missile tests. If you are doing something in Orissa, I will definitely come. I know you work there and that state is very dear to your heart too. Once I decided to visit Rameshwaram along with a group of friends. When Kalam was got to know, he was very eager to go with us as it was his birthplace. He said that he would join us at Madurai railway station. He had made all arrangement when his nomination of the post was President of India was announced. He told me we will keep the plan open for Rameshwaram. By this time, I was sure he was going to be the President of India irrespective of election. We could not ask him to join as he was a major security problem for him. Sadly, I had to tell him, "No, sir, please do not come. We will go on own." By the time we returned from the trip, he had, as I predicted, been elected president. He invited me to his swearing ceremony in the central hall of the parliament. When I stepped into the hall amazed me. It was his family members, children's and teachers, odd people like me and Father George, who used to be my student in Bangalore and then was doing research under Kalam's in Anna University. It was most unusual oath-taking ceremony. Everyone seemed to be close to Kalam. Normally, such ceremonies are attended by industrialists, politicians, and other VIPs. But here, there were students, teachers, scientists, ordinary middle-class people, and friend of Kalam. I saw Mrinalini Sarabhai, whose husband, late Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, was also a great scientist and knew Kalam well. Her sister, Captain Lakshmi, had contested against Kalam for the post of president. She too was present in the audience. I came away from the function feeling deeply moved by the love I saw everyone showering on Kalam. After a few months, I asked my son, who was a teenager, to meet Kalam. My son said, "Amma, he is a president of our country. He is a learned and well respected scientist. He is a very busy man. What will he talk about a person like me?" Child, please understand, I knew him before he became the president and I have met him after becoming president. There is absolutely no change. He loves talking people of your age. That is his mission. He interacts with children through email and chat. That is the reason I want you to meet him. Learn from him those qualities which you will never learn in any university. Somehow, he was not convinced. "He is a too big man for me," he muttered. Nevertheless, he was there when we had dinner with Kalam. For the next 2 hours, they hijacked the entire conversation. Murthy and I could only sit and listen. They discussed the best operating systems, the great Tamil saint Thiruvallar and his teaching, the future of the children of India, teaching methodologies in America, etc. After he left, my son told me, "Amma, I never felt that I was talking to President of India. Rather, it was like talking to my grandfather, whom I loved so much and I lost 4 years back. Amma, what you said was true and not an all exaggeration." When Kalam went by train on a tour of Bihar, he invited me to go along with him and 5 other friends. There I saw the face of Kalam. He would work more than all of us. His schedule was start at 6:30 or 7 and end at 10:30 or 11 p.m. At 71 years, he was tireless and the most enthusiastic person in the team, all of whom were much younger than him. He would regularly address large groups of students, followed by question answer sessions, when he would take individual questions and answer them. Then he would make the children recite some of the important lines after him. He reminded me of a loving school teacher or a doting grandfather or an excellent friend to see children these irrespective of their difference in age. During Bangalore's IT.com, I watched him talking an internet class for 1,000 students. He held their complete attention and was excellently prepared. When we built 150-bed pediatric hospital in Bhubaneswar, Orissa for poor children, I was very keen that he should come and see me. I remembered his promise to me in Chennai that he would come to Orissa if I invited him. But now he was the President of India and there were many people like me inviting to similar function. He was no longer professor at Anna University whom I could approach on telephone or send emails or convey my message. However, remembering his promise, I sent him email assuming it might not reach. But within a few days, I got a reply from secretary saying that he had agreed to inaugurate the hospital. Coincidentally, it was the eve of Buddha Purnima, 15 May 2003. I have heard many stories about Buddha who was born 2500 years ago. I was fortunate that this great teacher and lover of children could at least inaugurate and appreciate our effort. Chapter 4, Hassan's Attendance Problem. For many years now, I have been teaching computer science to students studying for their masters in computer application at college in Bangalore. I have interacted with many students, and though it is not possible to remember all of them, now the memory of some are etched in my mind. That is not because they were brilliant, but rather because something that was very different from others. In my first batch, there was a very bright boy called Hassan. He was tall, handsome, with a very good memory. He came from an affluent family where he was the only son. Initially, I did not know his existence at all, mainly, he was hardly present. I normally take the first class of the day, which is scheduled at 9 a.m., or the one after that 10 a.m. I prefer this time as this is when students are fresh and attractive. Once in a while, Hassan would turn up, particularly if there was a class test or during examinations. I met him more often in attendance shortage meetings. He would beg for attendance in such manner that it was very difficult for me to say no. Sometimes I would get upset and tell him, "No, I can't give you attendance. There should be discipline." "Yes, madam," he would reply apologetically. "Pardon me, from the next semester onwards, I will definitely attend your class. Can you pardon this time? To err is a human, to forgive is a divine. You have only taught us this." I could not remain angry for so long. Teachers get upset with the students who are not regular, but if the attendance shortage affects their appearance in the final examination, then one tends to melt like snow against the sun. A good teacher will always wish the best for her students, though I do agree discipline is very important too. As he was very bright, Hassan would inevitably get a first in the exam. However, before the exams started, every semester this drama with Hassan would repeat it. I would get upset, threaten, and ultimately give in. Each time Hassan would promise to improve his attendance record and for 1 week would attend all class and the same old story will follow. Each time he had a different reason for his absence. Unfortunately, they always seemed genuine to me. Once I got tired of his stories and called his parents. "Your son is a bright boy, he is not arrogant, but he is indisciplined. If only he came to class regularly and attended the lab, I am sure he get a rank. I have failed to convince him. I will be happy if you could look into the matter more seriously because this is going to affect his life," I said. Hassan's father was a busy man and did not take my words very seriously. He said, "As long as he does well, that is fine with me, because after a certain age, children will not listen to their parents. Only life will teach them." But his mother was in tears. "Madam, I have failed as a mother. He does not listen to me at all. He spends all night listening to music, chatting his friends. He sleeps at 6 in the morning. How can he come to any class? He does not pay attention to what I say and tells me I repeat the same things always." The meeting ended in an argument between his parents. His father said, "You are mother. It is your duty to correct him. You spend more time with him. I am so busy. You have failed." His mother said, "You are father. It is difficult to control boys. You can speak to him man to man. Earning money is not the only thing in the life." This continued for a while and the meeting ended fruitlessly. Hassan continued his ways till he passed out of his course as usual first in class. He was a nice boy. He came and thanked me. "Madam, thank you for your teaching me for last 3 years. Because of your kind heart, I could get all my attendance. I wish all teachers were like you in college." I laughed. God willing, we will meet again. But I did not meet Hassan for a long time and forgot all about him. Years passed. I taught many students. Some of them became very good human beings and some became famous, some became rich and some remained ordinary. As far as I was concerned, they were like my children. Some remember me still and send invitations to weddings, naming ceremonies, housewarmings, etc. If I am in town, I definitely try to attend because for me, their immense love is my strength. One Monday morning, my secretary told me a person wanting to sell the latest software in high school teaching and wanted to meet me. I was extremely busy and the piles of unanswered letters were looking at me accusingly. I had no time to talk to the salesperson, so I told her, "He can meet someone else, I don't have time." But my secretary said that he was insisting and he wanted to meet only me, that he was my student. She knew how fond I was of all my students, so she had been unable to say no to him. In that case, let him see me at 2 p.m. In the afternoon, a man of about 35, plump with a bald head and moderately dressed, was waiting for me in the office. His hand was having the CD with the software. I could not place this, though he seemed familiar. He smiled at me and said, "Madam, can you recognize me? You may not, because how could you remember all your students? From a window you can see outside world, but from outside you cannot see that all is inside." I liked his analogy and was sure he was my student because I often used this phrase in my class. Still, I could not guess the who he was. "Madam, I was the perpetual latecomer of your class." That is when coin dropped. "Hi Hassan, how are you? It's have been a long time since I last met you." I was very happy to see him. "Madam, I am fine and remember many of your lessons." "Is it a database management or C or Pascal?" "None of the software. I remember moral lessons." I did not know what moral lessons I had taught, though I do tell some stories during my lectures on computer software. "Hassan, what are you doing now?" Now his face became pale. "Madam, I am selling this software which is useful in teaching maths, physics and chemistry. It is to have help of both teacher and students. I know your foundation helps a lot in education at the high school level. I thought it may be some interest to you." "Hassan, what did you do for so many years?" I knew that his all classmates by this time were in very high position in software industry. Hassan, being a bright student, should have definitely done well. Yet, on the contrary, he seemed to be doing a small job of selling high school software door to door. "Madam, I was very regular in college. The same habit continued even after my graduation. I would get late and was very lazy. My mother would lose her temper and peace of mind. I did not bother. I took her for granted. After a lot pressure, I took up a job. But I continued the same habits of going late to the office, not keeping appointment, not being responsible. I did not have the proper knowledge also. In college, I hardly studied. Getting a first class in examination is not an index of amount of knowledge one has. I would study just before the exams, guess the probable question and skip the chapters. I always thought that I could somehow make it later, but without proper knowledge, it is difficult to work. I always laughed at those people who were hard workers. I used to make fun of them and called them nerds. Today, those nerds have become a millennial. Nobody liked me in my office because of my behavior. No employer would keep such employee and I lost whatever job I took up. In my frustration, I started quarreling in office as well as home. Finally, my father that told me that he was fed up and he told me to stay separately. He always gave me freedom, but I never picked up any good habits. My state is today the result of my own habits. I felt sorry for Hassan, who could, with all his intelligence and good nature, could not make it. "Hassan, you know your faults. You could have improved and made better for life for yourself. There is always a start at any age. Don't get disappointed. You may have lost the battle, but you can still win the war. Madam, old habits die hard." "But Hassan, it is possible to change your habits. There is nothing which is impossible. You only require power. You are yourself not aware of all your potential. Please remember, when elders say something, they do because they want you to lead a better life than them. Excellence does not come by accidents but practice." I could see a twinkle in his eyes. I thought I saw a glimpse of bright young Hassan. "I will try my best, madam," he promised as he rose to leave. I have not met Hassan since that day. I hope to bump into him unexpectedly once again and this time find him happy and successful. Chapter 5, The Red Rice Granny. Every year, our country has to face natural disasters in some form. It may be an earthquake in Gujarat, floods in Orissa, or a drought in Karnataka. In poor countries, these calamities create havoc. In the course of my work, I have found that after such calamities, many people like to donate money or materials to relief funds. We assume that most donation comes from rich people, but that is not true. On the contrary, people from the middle class and the lower class help more. Rarely do rich people participate wholeheartedly. A few years back, I was invited to a reputed company in Bangalore to deliver a lecture on corporate social responsibility. Giving a speech is easy, but I was not sure how many people in the audience would really understand the speech and change themselves. After my talk was over, I met many young girls and boys. It was an affluent company and the employees were well off and well dressed. They were all very emotional after the lecture. Madam, we buy so many clothes in the month. Can we donate our old clothes to those people who are affected by the earthquake? Can you coordinate and send them? Some of them offered their things. We have grown up children and we would like to give their old toys and some vessels. I was very pleased at the reaction. It reminded me of the incident in Ramayana where every squirrel helped Sri Rama by bringing a handful of sand. Please send your bags to my office. I will see that they reach to the right person. Within a week, my office was flooded with hundreds of bags. I was proud that my lecture was proven so effective. On Sunday, along with my assistant, I opened the bags. What we saw left us amazed and shocked. The bag was brimming over with all kinds of junk. Piles of high heeled slippers, some of them without pair, torn undergarments, unwashed shirts, cheap transparent saris, toy which had neither shape or color, unusable bed sheets, aluminium vessels, and broken cassettes were soon piled up in my mountain. There were only a few good shirts, saris, and usable material. It was apparent that instead of sending the material to garbage dump or kabariwala, these people had transferred them to my office in the name of donation. The men and women I had met that day were bright, well traveled, well off people. If educated people like them behave like this, what would uneducated people do? But then I was reminded of an incident from my childhood. I was born and brought up in a village in Karnataka's Haveri district called Shigon. My grandfather was a retired school teacher and my grandmother Kristakka never went to school. Both of them hardly traveled and had never stepped out of Karnataka. Yet they were very hardworking people who did work wholeheartedly without expecting anything from anybody in life. Photographs never appeared in the their photographs never appeared in any paper, nor did they go up onto the stage to receive a prize for their work. They did. They lived like flowers with fragrance in the forest, enchanting everyone around them, but hardly noticed by outside world. In the village, they had paddy fields and we used to store paddy in granaries. There were two granaries. One was in front and other was in back. The better quality rice which was white was always stored in front granary and the inferior quality which was little thick and red was stored in a granary back. In those villages there were no communal divide in the village. People came from different community and lived together in peace. Many would come for our house for asking alms. There were Muslim fakirs, Hindu dasaihas who roamed the countryside singing devotional song, Yelamma Jogathis who appeared holding the image of goddess Yelamma over their heads, poor students and invalid people. We never had too much cash in the house and we only help my grandfather could give these people was in form of rice. People who receive help not talk too much. They would receive the rice, smile, and raise their right hand to bless us. Irrespective of their religion, the blessing was always, "May God bless you." My grandfather always looked happy after giving them alms. I was a little girl then and not too tall. Since the entrance to the front granary was low, it was difficult for grown ups to enter. So I would be given a small bucket and sent inside. There, I used to fill up the bucket with rice and give it to them. They would tell me how many measures they wanted. In the evening, my grandmother used to cook for everybody. That time, she would send me to the granary at the back of the house where the red rice was stored. I would again fill up the bucket with as much as rice she wanted and get it for her to cook. This went on for many years. When I was a little older, I asked my grandparents a question that had been bothering me for long. Why should we eat the red rice always at night when it is not good and give those poor people better quality of rice? My grandmother, Krishnakka, smiled and told me something I will never forget in my life. Child, whenever you want to give something to somebody, give the best in you, never the second best. That is what I have learned from life. God is not there in temple, mosque or church. He is with you people. If you serve them with whatever you have served God. My grandfather answered my question in a different way. Our ancestors have taught us in Vedas that one should donate with kind words, donate with happiness, donate with sincerity, donate only to the needy, donate without expectation because it's not a gift, it is your duty. Donate with your wise consent, donate to other people without making your dependent helpless, donate without caring for caste, creed, and religion. Donate so that the receiver prospers. This lesson from my grandparents told me when I was just a little girl has stayed with me ever. If I am at all I am helping anyone today, it is because of the teaching of those simple souls. I did not learn them in any school or college. Chapter 6, The Real Jewels. The South District Canara in Karnataka is very different from any other. The literacy rate here is high, people are enterprising and hardworking. They have traveled all over the world in search of employment. If you see any Udupi vegetarian restaurant in India or any other part of globe, it is sure to have been started by a person from South Canada. The Infosys Foundation has a project called A Library for Every School. We donate books mainly to government school libraries so that children have easy access to a variety of books. For this, I travel extensively in rural areas and donate books written in Kannada on various subjects. All the traveling has helped me to understand what children want to read in different places. During my travels, I frequently stay in the houses of people I meet, as often there are no hostels in the small towns and villages I visit. Most of the time, I stay with the family of a teacher from the school and I'm visiting. Sometimes I stay the people with I had met earlier. In India, the guest is always treated with a lot of love, affection, and respect. An old Sanskrit saying is Athithi Devo Bhava, meaning the god has come in a form of guest. I have felt this to be true, especially during my stay in villages. The poorest of the poor have treated me with so much love and affection. They have given me the best hospitality possible without knowing who I am or expecting anything in return. In 1998, I went to a village in South Canada for a school function. It was the rainy season and the small village was on the coast of the Arabian Sea. It was pouring and there were no hotels in the village. The school teacher was a bachelor and lived in a rented room. He told me, Madam, the chairman of this school is a fine gentleman. He had asked me to tell you that you could stay tonight with his family. You cannot travel here because of this rain. Even the bridge has gone under water. I did not have much option. I felt a little uncomfortable in staying with someone I had never met. By that time, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Aithappa, came with an umbrella to call me. He had been caught up in some important work and not able to attend the function. His house was huge. It was a function without much decoration. There were big granary rooms in a storage place for coconuts, vegetables. It had red oxide flooring and was like many traditional houses of South Canada where there was inside a courtyard. Water had drawn to be from a well in the side of kitchen. There were few bedrooms on the ground floor and first floor. There was a cowshed at the back along with a large vegetable garden. That was all I could see. With it, I was already dark and raindrops were hitting me like pebbles hard on my feet. As soon as I entered, the lady of the house came with a warm smile and towels to wipe myself. Her smile put me instantly at ease. Without much ceremony, she said, Please feel comfortable, dinner will be ready in half an hour. I changed my dress and came to the dining hall. In the huge hall, there were four people, including me, the couple, and their elderly mother. Plantain leaves were laid on the floor and the cook was serving. There were innumerable food items, I don't know where to start. The old lady of the house was very gracious. She reminded me one of my large-hearted grandmother. After dinner, I wanted to chat with her. When I told her, she said, "If you want, you can stay in my room so that we can talk." I preferred that rather staying alone in the first guest room. I have always wondered why people in South Canada are so much more educated as compared to any district of Karnataka. I asked Kuttamma, "Did you study when you were young?" Kuttamma sighed as if she was in pain. "No, unfortunately, I did not go to school. When I was young, we were extremely poor and I was a coolie in the garden of a school teacher. I always felt that education is essential. If you can read and write, you can secure a better job. In my case, it was not possible. I Thappa should study as much as he could and I would work for hard. My husband also felt the same way, but he was killed by a snake bite when my son was only of 5 years old. It was my promise to him that I would educate his son. I tried to imagine life 6 decades back, social pressure, great poverty, and no help from the government. I have met many women of that age who have told me more or less the same story. Kuttamma continued. My son did not disappoint me. He went to Bombay as a hotel boy. He cleaned the plates in the morning and in the evening he went to Moghavera Night School and studied there. Yes, I know this school. It is in Worli and it's the oldest Kannada school in Bombay. Many children have studied there. Once he finished his schooling, he became a clerk at the counter of a hotel and went to the night college. He got his degree and started his own hotel in Bombay. He became very successful. Then why is he here now? Kuttamma smiled. I could see she was proud. He started many hotels, but I remained in my village. I never felt comfortable in Bombay in spite of all money he had because nobody spoke in my language there and I love this village. Yes, I know there is a Sanskrit saying Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi. It means your motherland is always a heaven. You are learned lady, so you can recite all this in Sanskrit, but my intuition told me to stay here and do something for our own people. My son became very healthy and handed over his business to son. He is now 65-year-old and 10 back he returned to his village. How does he spend time? I could understand the old lady not wanting to move out of a home, but I was unable to understand how busy, successful person like Aithappa could retire to God-forsaken sleepy village. When he became rich, my son asked me, "Amma, I have earned so much wealth. I want to know what you want. I remember you sold all your jewelry for my fees in the college. You had only one meal so that I could have two. Now I want to buy lots of jewelry for you." What did you answer? I told my son that in life, the real jewelry is education. The school teacher for whom I worked when I was young used to tell everything will perish over a time: flowers, beauty, food. No person looks beautiful forever, but education brings confidence to your face. That is the real beauty. I have crossed the age of weird jewelry. If you respect my wishes, build as many free schools as possible in many villages in South Canada. My son understood my feeling. He shifted himself in this village and has till today built 10 such schools. He remains very busy managing these schools. Now I understood the reason behind the high literacy rate of the area. Women like Kuttamma had never studied, but they had understood the importance of a good education. They had insisted their children to go to school. They It is certainly true that if one man studies, only one person is educated, whereas if one lady studies, the entire family is educated. Chapter 6: The Real Jewels. The South District Canara in Karnataka is very different from any other. The literacy rate here is high, people are enterprising and hardworking. They have traveled all over the world in search of employment. If you see any Udupi vegetarian restaurant in India or any other part of globe, it is sure to have been started by a person from South Canada. The Infosys Foundation has a project called A Library for Every School. We donate books mainly to government school libraries so that children have easy access to a variety of books. For this, I travel extensively in rural areas and donate books written in Kannada on various subjects. All the traveling has helped me to understand what children want to read in different places. During my travels, I frequently stay in the houses of people I meet, as often there are no hostels in the small towns and villages I visit. Most of the time, I stay with the family of a teacher from the school and I'm visiting. Sometimes I stay the people with I had met earlier. In India, the guest is always treated with a lot of love, affection, and respect. An old Sanskrit saying is Athithi Devo Bhava, meaning the goddess come in a form of guest. I have felt this to be true, especially during my stay in villages. The poorest of the poor have treated me with so much love and affection. They have given me the best hospitality possible without knowing who I am or expecting anything in return. In 1998, I went to a village in South Canada for a school function. It was the rainy season and the small village was on the coast of the Arabian Sea. It was pouring and there were no hotels in the village. The school teacher was a bachelor and lived in a rented room. He told me, Madam, the chairman of this school is a fine gentleman. He had asked me to tell you that you could stay tonight with his family. You cannot travel here because of this rain. Even the bridge has gone underwater. I did not have much option. I felt a little uncomfortable in staying with someone I had never met. By that time, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Aithappa, came with an umbrella to call me. He had been caught up in some important work and not able to attend the function. His house was huge. It was a function without much decoration. There were big granary rooms in a storage place for coconuts, vegetables. It had red oxide flooring and was like many traditional houses of South Canada where there was inside a courtyard. Water had drawn to be from a well in the side of kitchen. There were few bedrooms on the ground floor and first floor. There was a cowshed at the back along with a large vegetable garden. That was all I could see. With it, I was already dark and raindrops were hitting me like pebbles hard on my feet. As soon as I entered, the lady of the house came with a warm smile and towels to wipe myself. Her smile put me instantly at ease. Without much ceremony, she said, Please feel comfortable, dinner will be ready in half an hour. I changed my dress and came to the dining hall. In the huge hall, there were four people, including me, the couple, and their elderly mother. The entire leaves were laid on the floor and the cook was serving. There were innumerable food items. I don't know where to start. The old lady of the house was very gracious. She reminded me one of my large-hearted grandmother. After dinner, I wanted to chat with her. When I told her, she said, If you want, you can stay in my room so that we can talk. I preferred that rather staying alone in the first guest room. I have always wondered why people in South Canada are so much more educated as compared to any district of Karnataka. I asked Kuttamma, Did you study when you were young? Kuttamma sighed as if she was in pain. No, unfortunately, I did not go to school. When I was young, we were extremely poor and I was a coolie in the garden of a school teacher. I always felt that education is essential. If you can read and write, you can secure a better job. In my case, it was not possible. I Thappa should study as much as he could and I would work for hard. My husband also felt the same way, but he was killed by a snake bite when my son was only of 5 years old. It was my promise to him that I would educate his son. I tried to imagine life 6 decades back, social pressure, great poverty, and no help from the government. I have met many women of that age who have told me more or less the same story. Kuttamma continued. My son did not disappoint me. He went to Bombay as a hotel boy. He cleaned the plates in the morning and in the evening he went to Moghavera Night School and studied there. Yes, I know this school. It is in Worli and it's the oldest Kannada school in Bombay. Many children have studied there. Once he finished his schooling, he became a clerk at the counter of a hotel and went to the night college. He got his degree and started his own hotel in Bombay. He became very successful. Then why is he here now? Kuttamma smiled. I could see she was proud. He started many hotels, but I remained in my village. I never felt comfortable in Bombay in spite of all money he had because nobody spoke in my language there and I love this village. Yes, I know there is a Sanskrit saying, Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi. It means your motherland is always a heaven. You are learned lady, so you can recite all this in Sanskrit, but my intuition told me to stay here and do something for our own people. My son became very healthy and handed over his business to son. He is now 65-year-old and 10 back he returned to his village. How does he spend time? I could understand the old lady not wanting to move out of a home, but I was unable to understand how busy, successful person like Aithappa could retire to God-forsaken sleepy village. When he became rich, my son asked me, Amma, I have earned so much wealth. I want to know what you want. I remember you sold all your jewelry for my fees in the college. You had only one meal so that I could have two. Now I want to buy lots of jewelry for you. What did you answer? I told my son that in life the real jewelry is education. The school teacher for whom I worked when I was young used to tell everything will perish over a time, flowers, beauty, food. No person looks beautiful forever, but education brings confidence to your face. That is the real beauty. I have crossed the age of weird jewelry. If you respect my wishes, build as many free schools as possible in many villages in South Canada. My son understood my feeling. He shifted himself in this village and has till today built 10 such schools. He remains very busy managing these schools. Now I understood the reason behind the high literacy rate of the area. Women like Kuttamma had never studied, but they had understood the importance of a good education. They had insisted their children to go to school. They it is certainly true that if one man studies, only one person is educated, whereas if one lady studies, the entire family is educated. Chapter 8, Apro GRD. There are two photographs that hang on my office wall. Every day when I enter my office, I look at them and start my day. They are the picture of two old people. One gentleman is in a blue suit and the other one is in a black and white photograph of an old man with dreamy eyes and a white bird. Many of have asked me if they are related to me. Some people have asked me, is this black and white photo of Sufi saint or a religious guru? I smiled and replied, no, nor they are related to me. Then why do you look at them and start the day? These people had the great impact on my life. I am grateful to them. Who are these peoples? The man in the blue suit is Bharat Ratna J.R.D. Tata and the black and white photo is of Jamshedji Tata. But why do you have their photos in your office? You can call it gratitude. Then invariably I have to tell the person the following story. It happened a long time ago. I was young and bright and bold and idealistic. I was studying in the final year for my master's degree in computer science at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which was then known as Tata Institute. For me, life was full of fun and joy. I did not know what helplessness or injustice meant. It was probably the April of 1974 Bangalore and was just becoming warm. Red Gulmohar were blooming at IISC's camp. I was the only girl in my postgraduate department in engineering and was staying in the ladies' hostel. Other girls were pursuing their research in different department of science. After completing my post-graduation, I wanted to go abroad and do my doctorate in computer science and had already been offered scholarship from universities in USA. I had not thought of taking a job in India. One day, while on the way to my hostel from the lecture hall, I saw an advertisement on the notice board. It was a standard job requirement notice from a famous automobile company, Telco. It stated that company required young, bright engineers, hardworking with excellent academic background. At the bottom, there was a small line, lady candidates need not to apply. I read it and became very upset. For the first time, I faced with gender discrimination. Though I was not keen taking a job, I took it as a challenge and decided to apply. I had done extremely well in my studies, probably better than most of the boys. Little did I know that in real life, to be successful, academic excellence is not a necessary condition. After reading the notice, I went fuming to my room. There, I decided not to apply for the job but also to inform the topmost person of the management of Telco about the injustice. I got a postcard and started to write. But there was a problem. Who was the head of Telco? I did not know. I was so ignorant that I thought it must be one of the Tatas. I knew J.R.D. Tata was the head of the Tata Group and I had seen his picture in newspapers. Actually, Sumant Mulgonkar was then its chairman, which I was not aware. I took the postcard and started writing. Even clearly now, I have remembered what I had written to JRD. Tatas have always been pioneers. They are people who started the basic infrastructure in India like iron and steel, chemicals, textiles, locomotives. They have carried higher education in India since 1900 and are responsible for the establishment of the Indian Institute of Science. Fortunately, I study there, but I am surprised that in such a company you can make a distinction between men and women. I posted the letter that was written in anger, and after a few days, I forgot about it. Within 10 days, I received a telegram stating that I had to appear for an interview at Telco Pune at their expense. I was taken aback, but my hostel mates told me that I had to use this opportunity to go to Pune free of cost. And the reason? Pune saris were cheap. I was told to buy saris for them. I even collected 30 rupee per head for each of their sari. Now, when I look back, I feel laughing at the reason, but then they seemed good one to make a trip. This was my first trip to Pune. I fell in love with the city, and even to this date, it is very clear to me. Hard. I feel as much at home in Pune as I do in Hubli. The city changed my life in so many ways. As directed, I went to Telco's Pimpri office for the interview. There were 6 people on the panel, and it was only then I realized this was serious business. This is the girl who wrote to GRD. I heard them whisper to each other as soon as I entered. By then, I was sure that I would not get a job. And when I won't get a job, why should be scared? So I was rather cool for the interview. Even before they started the interview, I know they were biased, so I told them rather rudely, I hope this is only a technical interview. They were taken aback of my rudeness. Even today, I am ashamed of my attitude. During the interview, they asked me many technical questions and I answered all of them. Then one elderly gentleman with an affectionate voice told me, do you know why we said that lady candidates need not to apply? The reason is that to this day we have not employed any ladies on the shop floor of the factory. This is an automobile industry. Trainees may have to work in shifts. For training, we may have to send them to Jamshedpur in Bihar. All our plants have men and machinery. Our trainees have to drive. We have a trainees hostel and a guest house for them. If a lady enters, then how can we accommodate her? We don't know how men on shop floor will accept her. How will she come for shifts? We care our employees and particularly if she is a lady. It is not a college where there is no gender difference. This is a factory. When it comes to academics, you are first ranker throughout. We appreciate that. People like you should work more in research laboratories. I was a young girl from a small town, Hubli. My world was very small. I did not know the ways large corporate houses and their difficulties. So I answered, but somewhere you must start. Otherwise, a lady will never be able to work in the factories. You are pioneers in many aspects of life. When I look at your industries, you are far ahead of other people. If you think this way, then how will any lady ever enter this so called man's domain? Training a candidate costs a lot to our company. You are of a marriageable age. After your training, you will leave this company and shift to wherever your husband works. Is it not a wastage of money for us? I thought for a moment and replied, I will definitely agree with what you say. I am sure when many of you married, your wives came along with you, and it has been our tradition. But is it also not true that men undergo many training and just for a few more hundred rupees they shift their jobs? You don't have any rule for them. You can't stop them. Finally, after a long interview, I was told that I was successful in securing a job at Telco. On the way back, I got down at Hubli, my hometown, and I was eager to meet my father, always my best friend, and tell him about my adventure. I was sure that he will be happy and praise me. But I was in for a shock. He was very upset. He said, "You should have basic manners when addressing elderly people like JRD Tata. You should have written the letter more politely and put the letter in an envelope instead of sending a postcard. Now you have to take up this job because you are morally responsible." That is what my future had in store for me. Never ever had I thought I would take up a job at Pune. There I met a shy young man from Karnataka. We became good friends and got married. The elderly gentleman who interviewed me was Satyamurthy, who was an excellent technocrat and human being. I worked with him for some years. After joining Telco, I realized who JRD Tata was. He was uncrowned king of Indian industry. I did not meet him until I was transferred to the Bombay. JRD had an office at Bombay House, the headquarters of Tata Industry. One day I was supposed to show some report to our chairman, Mr. Mulgonkar, whom everyone always referred to SM. So I went to his office on the first floor of the Bombay House. While I was in SM's room, JRD walking. That was the first time when I saw Apro JRD. Apro means ours in Gujarati. In Bombay House, people used to affectionately call him Apro JRD. By this time, I knew who he was and was feeling very nervous, remembering my rude postcard to him. SM introduced me very nicely. "Jay, look at this young girl is an engineer and that too a postgraduate. She has worked on the shop floor at Telco. Is it not unusual? She was first girl in our Telco shop floor." JRD looked at me. I was praying he would not ask me any questions regarding my interview or the postcard. Thankfully, he didn't ask me anything about that. Instead, he remarked, "It is nice that our country girls are getting into engineering. By the way, what is your name?" When I joined Telco, I was Sudha Kulkarni, sir. Now I am Sudha Murthy. "Where do you work?" "At Nanavati Mahalaya," I replied. He smiled at me, nodding his head, and the two men started their discussion. I just ran out of the room. After that, I used to see JRD on and off. He was the chairman of large group of company and I was only an engineer in one of those company. There was nothing we had in common. I used to look at him with awe. One day, I was waiting Murthy to come and pick me after office hours. To my surprise, I saw JRD standing next to me. I did not know how to react. I was feeling uneasy. Again, I started thinking about the postcard. Now, when I look back, I realized JRD must have forgotten it. It must have been a very small incident to him, but not so for me. He asked me, "Young lady, why are you here? Office time is over." I said, "Sir, I am waiting for my husband to come and pick me." JRD said, "It is getting dark. There's no one in the corridor. I will wait with you until your husband comes." I was quite used for waiting Murthy, so I was not bothered much by having to wait in the dark. But having JRD waiting along with me made me very uncomfortable. Out of the corner of my eye, I looked at him. He wore a simple white pant and shirt. He was old, yet his face was glowing without any air of superiority. I was thinking, look at this person. He is the chairman, a well respected man in our country, and he is waiting for the sake of an ordinary lady employee. As soon as I saw Murthy, I rushed out. JRD called me and said, "Young lady, tell your husband never to be late and make his wife wait." In 1982, I had to resign from my job at Telco. I was very reluctant to resign but did not have a choice. Even now, my love and respect for the Tata House of Tatas is same. I always looked up to JRD as my role model for his simplicity, generosity and kindness, and the care he took of his employees. After I had my final settlement with company, I was coming down the steps of Bombay House when I saw JRD coming up. He was absorbed in some thought. I wanted to say goodbye to him, so I stopped him. Gently he said, "So what are you doing, Miss Kulkarni?" That was the way he addressed me. "Sir, I am leaving Telco." "Where are you going?" "Pune." "Sir, my husband is starting a company called Infosys, so I will have to shift Pune." "Oh, what will you do when you are successful?" "Sir, I do not know whether we will be successful or not." Never start with diffidence. Always start with confidence. When you are successful, you must give back to society. So society gives us too much, we must return it. I wish you all the best. Then JRD continued walking up to the stairs. I stood for a while watching him. That was the last time when I saw him alive. Many years later, I met Ratan Tata in the same Bombay office, occupying the same chair as JRD. I told him many of sweet memories of working with Telco. I said, "I cannot call you Mr. Tata like Murthy calls you. You are occupying Apno JRD's seat. You will be always chairman sir to me." Later he told to me, "It was nice listening about Jay from you. The sad part is that he is not alive to see you today." I consider JRD a great man because, in spite of being extremely busy person, he valued one postcard written by a girl who was asking for justice and questioning him. He must have received thousands of letters every day. He could have thrown mine in a dustbin, but he didn't do that. He respected the intentions of that unknown girl who had neither influence nor money and gave her an opportunity to work in his company. He did not merely give her a job but also changed her life and mindset forever. Today, in any engineering college, I see that 40 to 50% of students are girls. On the shop floor of many mechanical industries, we see so many ladies working. That time I think of JRD fondly. If at all times stops and asks me whatever I want in my life, I would say I wish JRD were alive today to see how the company we started has grown. He would have enjoyed it wholeheartedly. Chapter 9, Heart of Gold. This is a true story. I heard it on radio during one of my visits to US. It happened in one of the biggest city in the US called New York. It was winter. One evening a worried mother stood shivering in the cold, wearing an old coat. With her was a little girl, thin, sick looking with a shaven head. She was wearing an oversized dress which somebody had probably given her out of mercy. It was apparent that they were homeless and poor. The child had a cardboard placed in her hand which said, "I am suffering from cancer, please help me." The mother was carrying a begging bowl. Whenever the traffic lights turned red, they would approach people, stopping them on road and asking for help. America is a rich country, but if you are sick and don't have an insurance, then you are lost. Nobody can support you. People give small amounts of money when they see such pleas for help. This kind of scene is not uncommon in India. We see lots of beggars with small infants in one hand and a begging bowl in another. But America is not so common. People felt bad for this unfortunate mother and child. One day, a policeman was passing by and saw them. He asked them few questions and noticed that the child indeed looked very sick with her swollen eyes and shaven head. He wanted to help, so he opened his purse. He saw a bundle of notes which he had just drawn from the bank. He had received a good bonus for the excellent work he has done. God has been very kind to me, he thought. I have a warm home, a caring wife, and a loving son. But these unfortunate people don't have any of these. It is not their mistake that God has not been kind to them. He remembered many things that he had promised to his wife or his son when he got bonus. For a while was in two minds. Then he decided to give all the cash which he had drawn from the bank to woman and said, "Please take good care of the child." When he reached home, his son met at the doorstep and usually hugged him. The house was warm and nice. He sat in front of his wife and looking at the snow falling outside. He narrated the whole incident. After listening to him for a while, his wife was silent, then she smiled. But the son was angry. He said, "Dad, how are you sure that they have not cheated you? And even though you wanted to give some money, you could have given some portion. Why did you give everything?" The policeman laughed at his son and said, "Son, you don't know what poverty is. I come such across unfortunate people in my work. The days passed and everybody forgot about it. One day, a news item in the paper caught son's attention. Mother and child caught cheating. With great interest, he read. A greedy mother used her healthy child to pose as a cancer patient. She shaved the child's head, starved her, and dressed her shabbily so that anybody could feel the child was suffering from cancer. Using this tactic, she duped many people. The mother has been arrested. The son realized who these peoples were and was very upset. When his father came home, he told him as soon as he entered the house, "Dad, you were cheated by that lady and her child who thought you was a patient. The child is healthy and you gave your entire bonus to that child." His father did not reply. He sat down and looked out of the window. There were children playing outside. Winter was over and summer was setting in. In a calm voice, he said, "Son, I am very happy that the child is healthy." The boy was surprised. He thought, being a policeman, his father would pick up the phone and talk to police station, or he would have been depressed that he had been cheated and had given much of the money to healthy child. But there were no traces of such emotions. He asked, "Dad, tell me, are you not upset?" His father again gave him the answer, "I am happy that the child is healthy." By that time, his wife came with a mug of coffee in her hand. She had heard the entire conversation. With happiness in her voice, she told her son, "Son, you are very fortunate. You have an extraordinary father who is not angry even though he has lost a lots of money. You should be proud that your father is happy thinking somebody's child is healthy rather than worrying about his own big bonus. Learn from him. Help people without expecting anything from them in return." Chapter 10. A Wedding in Russia. A wedding is a great event in everyone's life. In India, it is done with great deal of ceremony. In our films, a large number of stories are based on weddings. If you do look at Indian history, you will see many wars have been fought for the sake of a marriage. People have always spent a lot of money and effort for these. In the olden days, the wedding celebration used to carry on for a week. Later, it came down for 3 days, then 2 days, and now it is for a day. The amount of money spent sometimes constitute the entire saving of lives of a person. At the times, people take such huge loan for the celebration that they have to go on repaying throughout their lives. In my experience, whenever I have talked to bonded laborers, I have found that majority of them have got into such a state that because of wedding expenses they had incurred. In a marriage, the couple and their parents are worried about various things. Is she looking pretty? Are the guests being looked after? Will he keep her happy? People like you and me are worried about the wedding lunch. It is an occasion where young boys get to meet young girls, old people talk about their ailments, and women exhibit their finest jewelry and silk saris. Recently, I was in Moscow, Russia. Moscow city has many war memorials. Russia has won three great wars in history, which is a source of pride. They have built war memorials and erected many statues of the generals who were responsible. The first war between Peter the Great and Sweden. The first war was between Tsar Alexander I and Napoleon of France. The third was against Hitler in World War II in 1945. There is a huge park in Moscow known as Peace Park. In the middle of the park, there is a huge monument. There is a pillar, and on the pillar, different battles fought by Russia are mentioned along with the dates and places. The park has beautiful fountains. In the summer, the flower of many colors bloom, and the place is for feast for the eyes. In the night, it is decorated with lights. Every Russian is proud of this park, and it is a spot visited by all tourists. The day I went to the park was a Sunday. It was drizzling and cold, though it was summer. I was standing under an umbrella and enjoying the beauty. Suddenly, my eyes fell on a young couple. It was apparent that they had just got married. The girl was in her mid 20s, slim with blonde hair and blue eyes. She was very beautiful. The boy was almost same age and was very handsome. He was in a military uniform. The bride was wearing a white satin dress decorated with pearls and pretty laces. It was so long that two young girls were standing behind her holding up the ends of the gown so it wouldn't be dirty. One of young boys was holding an umbrella over their head so that couple would not get drenched. The girl was holding a bouquet of and the two were standing in their arms linked. It was a beautiful sight. I started wondering why they had come to this park in this rain soon after getting married. They could surely have gone to a merrier place. I watched as they walked together to the dais near the memorial and kept the bouquet, bowed their heads in silence, and slowly walked back. By now, I was very curious to know what was going on. I could not ask couple because they probably could not speak English and I did not know the Russian language. There was an old man standing with them. He looked at me, my sari, and asked, "Are you an Indian?" I replied, "Yes, I'm an Indian. I have seen Raj Kapoor's movie. They were great. Raj Kapoor had visited Russia. I know one of the Hindi song, Main Awara Hoon. Do you know Moscow city has great statue of three Indians? Who are they? Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, and Indira Gandhi. Since we were chatting quite amicably now, I decided to use the opportunity to ask some question. How come you know English? Oh, I worked abroad. Will you tell me why that young couple visited the war memorial on their wedding day? Oh, that is the custom in Russia. The wedding takes place normally on a Saturday or a Sunday, irrespective of the season. After signing the register at the marriage office, married couples must visit the important national monuments nearby. Every boy in this country has to serve in the military for a couple of years at least. Regardless of his position, he must wear his service uniform on the wedding. Why is that? This is a mark of gratitude. Our forefathers have given their lives in various wars Russia has fought. Some of them we won and some we lost, but their sacrifice was always for the country. The newly married couples need to remember they are living in a peaceful, independent Russia because of their ancestors' sacrifice. They must ask for their blessings. Love for the country is more important than wedding celebration. We elders insist on continuing with this tradition, whether it be Moscow, St. Petersburg, or any other part of Russia. On the wedding day, they have to visit the nearest war memorial. This set me wondering about what we teach our children. Do we tell them about the sacrifices of 1857 War of Independence? Do we talk about the 1942 Quit India movement? Or ask newlyweds to visit the Anand Andaman Cellular Jail where thousands lived in solitude and were sent to the gallows? Do we remember Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Shivaji, Maharana Pratap, Lakshmi Bai who gave their lives to save our country? These men and women never lived to see an independent India, but do we have the courtesy to remember them on the most important day of our lives? We are busy shopping for saris, buying jewelry, and preparing elaborate menus and partying and discos. My eyes fill with tears at the thought, and I wished we could learn a lesson from Russia. Chapter 11. Amma, what is your duty? At that time, my daughter Akshata was a teenager. By nature, she was very sensitive. On her own, she started reading for blind children at Raman Maharshi Academy for the Blind at Bangalore. She was a scriber too. She used to come home and tell me about the world of blind people. Later, she wrote an essay called I Saw the World Through Blind Eyes of Mary. Mary was a student at the academy who was about to appear for the pre-university exam. Once, Akshata took Mary to the Lal Bagh for a change. The conversation between them was quite unusual. Mary, there are different types of red roses in the park, Akshata told her. Mary was surprised. Akshata, what do you mean by red? Akshata did not know how to explain what was red. She took a rose and a jasmine and gave them to Mary. Mary, smell these two flowers in your hand. They have different smells. The first one is rose, it is red in color. The second one is jasmine, it is white. Mary, it is difficult to explain what is red and what is white, but I can tell you that in the world of many colors, which can seen and differentiated only through the eyes and not by touch. I am sorry. After that incident, Akshata told me, Amma, never talk about colors when you talk to blind people. They feel frustrated. I felt so helpless when I was trying to explain Mary. Now I always describe the world to them by describing smells and sounds which they understand easily. Akshata also used to help a blind boy called Ananda Sharma at this school. He was the only child of a school teacher from Bihar. He was bright and jolly. He was about to appear for his second pre-university exam. One day I was heading for an examination committee meeting. At that time, I was head of the Department of Computer Science at local college. It was almost the end of February. Winter was slowly ending and there was a trace of summer setting in. Bangalore is blessed with beautiful weather. There many trees lining on the roads were flowering and the city was swathed with different shades of violet, yellow and red. I was busy getting ready to attend the meeting, hence, I was collecting old syllabi, question papers, and reference books. Akshata came upstairs to my room. She looked worried and tired. She was then studying in class 10. I thought she was tired preparing her exams. As a mother, I have never insisted them study too much. My parents never did that. They always believed that the child had to be responsible. A responsible child would sit down to study on their own. I told Akshata, don't worry about the exams, trying is in your hand. The results are not with you. She was annoyed and irritated by my advice. Amma, I didn't talk about any examination. Why are you reminding me of that? I was surprised at her irritation, but I was also busy gathering old question papers, so did not say anything. Absently, I looked at her face. Was there a trace of sadness on it, or was it my imagination? Amma, you know Anand Sharma. He came to our house once. He is a bright boy. I am confident that he will do very well in the examination. He is also confident about it, but he wants to study further. She stopped. By this time, I had found the old question papers I had been looking for, but not the syllabus. My search was on. Akshata stood facing me and continued. Amma, he wants to study at St. Stephen's in Delhi. He does not have anybody. He is poor. It is an expensive place. What should he do? Who should support him? I am worried. It was getting late for my meeting, so I casually remarked, Akshata, why don't you support him? Amma, where do I have the money to support a boy in a Delhi hostel? My search was still on. You can forfeit your birthday party and save money and sponsor him. At home, even now, both our children do not get pocket money. Whenever they want to buy anything, they ask me and I give the money. We don't have big birthday parties. Akshita birthday party mean calling a few of our friends to the house and ordering food from the nearby fast food joint Shanti Sagar. Amma, when an educated person like you, well traveled, well read, and without love for money does not help poor people, then don't expect anyone else to do. Is it not your duty to give back to those unfortunate people? What are you looking for in life? Are you looking for glamour or fame? You are the daughter of a doctor, granddaughter of a school teacher, and come from a distinguished teaching family. If you cannot help poor people, then don't expect anyone else to do it. Her words made me abandon my research. I turned around and looked at my daughter. I saw a sensitive young girl pleading for the future of a blind boy. Or she was someone reminding me of my toward duty towards society. I had received so much from the society and country, but in what way was I returning it? For a minute, I was frozen. Then I realized that I was holding the syllabus I was looking for in my hand, and it was getting late for the meeting. Akshata went away with anger and sadness in her eyes, and when I also left for college in a confused state. Now, when I reached, I saw that as usual meeting was delayed. Now I was all alone and I settled down in my chair in one of the lofty rooms of the college. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is boring, whereas solitude, you can inspect and examine your deeds and your thoughts. I sat and recollected what happened after noon. Akshata's words were still ringing in my mind. I was 45 years old. What was my duty at the age? What was I looking in life? I did not start out life in a lot of money. A great deal of hard work had been put in to get where we are today. What had I learned from the hard work in the journey of my life? Did I work for money, fame, or glamour? No, I did not work for those. They came accidentally to me. Initially, I worked for myself, excelling in studies. After that, I was devoted to Infosys and my family. Should not the remaining part of my life used to help those people who were suffering for no fault of theirs? Was that not my duty? Suddenly I remembered JRD parting advice to me. Give back to society. I decided that I was going to be what to do for rest of my life. I felt relieved and years younger. I firmly believe that there's no decision should be taken emotionally. It should be taken with a cool mind when you are aware of the consequences. After a week, I wrote my resignation letter as the head of the department and opted for only a teacher's post. I am ever grateful to Akshata for helping bringing happiness and satisfaction in my work and life. It means more to me than good ranks I got in school and my wealth. When I see hope in the eyes of a destitute, see the warm smiles on the faces of once helpless peoples, I feel so satisfied. They tell me that I am making a difference. I joined Infosys Foundation as a founder trustee. The foundation took up a number of philanthropic projects for the benefit of poor in different states in India. I received many awards on various occasions. One of them was Economic Times Award given to Infosys Foundation. As a trustee, I was invited to receive this award. At that time, I remember my guru. Now she was a student in USA and I told her, at least for one day you should come for this award in Bombay. If you had not woken me up at the right time, I would not have been receiving it today. I want you to be presented. I will remain indebted to Akshata forever for the way she made me change my life and the lesson she taught me. Chapter 12, The Story of Two Doctors. My sister is a doctor in a government hospital. She works for very long hours. Often she has to do night duty, which can be very exhausting. Our government hospitals may not have too many facilities, but at least the poor can get the treatment here almost for free. Once during one of her night duties, she had to perform many operations and came home very late. Just as she reached home, there was a call from hospital for her to come and perform another emergency operation. She was about to leave immediately. Seeing her tired face, I made a comment. I agree, patients are very important to doctors, but for last 24 hours you were in hospital. You are a human being and you too require rest. You can tell somebody else to do this operation. Why don't you rest now? She smiled at me and said, it is not me alone, there are many doctors along with me who are working hard equally. They also require rest. I am the senior most doctor, so I must lead the team. In the larger interest of the people, you sacrifice your personal pain. Don't you remember the story of Anastasia? Saying this, she went away. I then remembered the story she mentioned. My sister had narrated it to me some years ago. To what my existence I narrate extent the story is true, I don't know. But it is a remarkable one. Many years ago in England, there was a father and son pair who were doctors. The father was very famous and innovative, and the son was young and enthusiastic. In those days, there was no concept of anesthesia, and whenever a person was to be operated, chloroform was given. The senior doctor did many experiments in this field and developed a medicine which, when injected in the area where the operation was to be done made that only part numb. There was no need to make the person unconscious. Today we call this local anesthesia. He performed several experiments and was convinced by adding different chemicals that his medicine was effective. But there was one problem. No one would offer himself for the experiment. Without experimenting on human being, this medicine could not be officially released in the market. Now the doctor's son had 6 fingers on his left hand. One day he suggested to his father, "Father, I know your medicine is very good. Inject it to my sixth finger and operate and remove the finger. Anyway, I want to get rid of that finger. Let us perform this operation in front of other doctors. No man can stand the pain of surgery without anesthesia. When they look at my face, they will come to know that your medicine has made the area numb and I cannot experience any pain." The suggestion was very good. The father conveyed a message to the members of the Academy of Medical Science, who are the final authority for allowing this medicine to be used in public. The day of operation came and several scientists, doctors, and other public figures assembled to watch the effect of the medicine. The father exhibited his son's sixth finger and injected the medicine. He said, "Now I will start the operation. You can observe the patient's face." There was a smile on the young man's face. The operation was performed and was a success. Throughout, the smile remained on the son's face. Everybody was amazed by what they saw and congratulated the senior doctor for his work. After they left, the young doctor was dressing his wound. His father had tears in his eyes. He embraced his son and started sobbing uncontrollably. "Sorry, my son, I knew what pain you were undergoing during operation. You never showed it to the public. The injection had to be preparing by adding 4 chemical, but in hurry and tension before the operation, the father forgot to add the fourth. Because of that injection was not at all effective. There was an uncontrollable pain during operation. However, the son realized that there was something his father had forgotten. If he showed his pain, his father's experiment would fail. He knew how hard his father had worked to develop this medicine. He himself was aware that it was effective. It was unfortunate that something was not making it work now. In the middle of operation, the father too realized that the fourth chemical was missing and the medicine was not working. But he was unable to tell this in public. He knew what agony his son was undergoing in spite of smile in his face. That was why when everyone left, he broke down crying. The son consoled him and said, "Father, don't worry. For welfare of others, I controlled my own pain." I don't know how true is this story, but in my sisters and her colleagues' dedication to their work, I thought I saw a glimpse of sacrifices in people in medical profession make. Chapter 13: A Journey Through the Desert. Till a few years back, I did not have a driver and I used to drive everywhere myself. The petrol bunk where I filled my petrol had a service station beside it. Some Saturdays I would take my car to that service station and stay there until it was serviced. There were 2 boys, perhaps of 14 years of age, who worked there. They were identical twins. One was called Ram and other was Gopal. They were very poor and did not go to school, yet they could speak many languages. Though Bangalore is the capital of Karnataka, Kannada is not only the language spoken here. There are many peoples who have come from outside the state and settled in this beautiful city. Hence, Bangalore has become very cosmopolitan. These boys had met many people during their week in the station and so could speak Kannada, which was their mother tongue, and also Tamil, Telugu, and Hindi. Ram and Gopal worked as errand boys. They were always cheerful and everyone liked them. The servicing of my car used to take about 2 hours. The boys would bring a chair for me and I would sit under the shade of a tree and read some books. Over a period of time, I became friendly with them and told me about their life. They did not have a father, their mother worked as a laborer. They stayed in a nearby slum with their uncle. They had studied up to class 4 but then had to drop out as they were very poor. There was nobody who could guide and teach them at home. Though the salary at the service station was not much, they got free breakfast and lunch and sometimes small tips from the car owners. They had no fixed working hours. They came around 8 in the morning and went home only by 8 p.m. Sunday was the only holiday they got.
In spite of the difficulties they faced, these kids were always smiling. They never said no or grumbled about any work they were told to do. I have seen many children in many well off families with grumpy faces and no happiness. If you ask them to do any work, they give hundred of reasons to avoid it. I suppose happiness does not depend on the amount of money in the bank. I used to really like these two boys for their enthusiasm. Once in a while, I took snacks and some old shirts for them. They took the clothes with a great joy as if they was made of silk, but they never saw them or wear old clothes. If I asked them, they said, "Madam, we always wear dirty clothes to work because at the station they become greasy." Once I told some storybooks for them, thinking they could read them at night. After all, while other children of their age were studying in the schools, attending hockey matches and chess tournaments, these boys were slogging to make both ends meet. But when I gave them storybook, their faces became pale. For the first time ever, I saw the unhappiness too on their face. They said, "Madam, it takes a lot time for us to read and we are not used to reading. Will you tell us the story?" "How can I tell the story here when you are working at all time? We get some free time at about 4 o'clock. If you could come to service your car, then we can sit with you and listen to your story." That their two pair of eyes were begging me for the stories and I could not say no. I remembered how my own children always insisted I tell them stories in the night. I agreed. So it became a routine for me to tell stories on Saturday evenings. I went there even if my car did not need to be serviced. They were very attentive when I told stories and waited eagerly for more. This went on for many months. Then I decided to get a driver and stopped driving myself. My driver took the car for servicing after that, and I did not meet Ram and Gopal for a long time. Time flows like water. After almost a decade, one day my driver was complaining about some problem the car was giving him. I told him to get it repaired. My old car had outlived its life, but still it was working. When my driver came back from the garage, he said, "After looking at the car mechanic asked about you. Do you know owner the Good Luck Garage?" "I have not heard its name. Is it a new garage?" "It is relatively new. I always prefer to go to the garage owned by youngster. The young man is very sincere. It seems he has grown for a long time. He asked if you are still teaching in college." I could not think of anyone I knew who could be owning a garage now. Since my driver did not know his name, I was unable to place him and assumed it was some old student of mine, though since I was teaching computer science. I could not figure out how this person had shifted to automobile engineering. When my driver told me a second time that the owner had garage asked me, I felt I should go and meet this man who was concerned about me. The next day, I went to the Good Luck Garage. It was a fairly modern garage with well equipped. There was a glass cabin where I assumed owner sitting. As soon as I entered, a handsome young man in blue overalls greeted me. He was holding a spanner and a screwdriver in his hand. "Madam, please come and sit down in the cabin. I will wash my hands and come in a minute." I sat on a sofa in his office. It was a nice functional office. The young man looked vaguely familiar to me. I knew I had met him somewhere, but I could not place where. Where? I wondered, did I teach this boy in pre-university? That time, boys are 16 or 17-year-old adolescent with a lot of energy. When I met them after they had grown up, they looked so different and I failed to recognize them. By that time, the man had returned with a coffee mug and a glass of water. "Madam, you have changed a lot. You look tired and old. I am sorry, I am unable to recollect your name. You should excuse me and tell me your name. As you said, I am growing old." He smiled and there was a dimple on his cheek. He was one of those kids who used to work in garage a decade back. Was he Ram or Gopal? Even in those days I used to get confused. I asked him, "Are you Ram or Gopal?" "I am Ram, madam." "Please sit down. I am very happy to see you like this." Now I could understand why Ram had inquired me after recognizing the car. Madam, I am very grateful to you for your help in those days. What help did I give? I used to give some old shirts and eatables and told some stories. Madam, you don't know how your stories changed my life. Do you remember the stories you told us? I didn't. From the ocean of the stories in my head, I had told them a few. No, I don't remember. He sat down opposite to me, closed his eyes, and started telling his own story. Madam, our life was very difficult. You were aware of it. The only thing we looked forward to was your visit every Saturday when we listened to your stories. We used to stay with our uncle, and whatever we earned, he would take. The stories you told were only escape from the drudgery of our lives. Our working hours were long. I felt that I should go to school and continue my studies. But the night schools were all quite far from where we studied. With no financial help or support from home, it seemed study would always remain a dream till we heard one of your stories. It made a big difference in our lives. Now I was keen to know what happened next. Tell me which story that was. The roles had got reversed. I was the listener and he was the storyteller. Once in a village there were many poor people. They all wanted to cross a desert to go to next village where life was better and the future was more promising. Many boys wanted to go. The elders village in had said to them, if you want to do something in your life, you must go to that town. You pick up stones from the desert and carry to that. Some buyers will pay money for those rare stones. One morning, two boys started their journey. They carried food and water with them. In the beginning, the sand was still cold and the sun not yet hot. The journey was great. They did not feel tired and strode on. After some time, the sun rose over their heads and the sand started getting hot. After walking for a long time, they thought they must have reached the edge of the desert. So they ate all their food and drank the water. But soon they realized that they had walked only the halfway. They also started collecting stones and selling in the town. After some time, their bags were full of stones and were very heavy. One boy felt it was too much to carry, so he threw the stones and decided to go back. The other boy said, let us listen to our elders. Come on, what may. Let us cross this desert and go to the next town. The first boy did not listen and went back. The second boy continued to walk another town. It was a difficult journey, collecting the stones and traveling all alone, with no water to drink. Sometimes he felt his friend was right. There was no guarantee what was in that town. It was better to stop and go back to the village, but faith and hope kept him going. After walking for a long time, he reached the town. Much to his disappointment, he saw it like a other town. There was a dharmshala nearby. It was getting dark and he was tired, so he decided to spend the night there. Next morning, when he got up and wanted to throw the heavy stones he had collected and return his village, he opened his bag and he saw that all the stones had become big diamonds. In a minute's time, he had become a millionaire. Do you remember, madam? You also told us the meaning of the story. A student's life is like the desert, examination are hot suns, difficulties are warm, and study is like hunger and thirst. As a student, you have to travel all alone, collecting knowledge and the skill, the way the boy in the story collected stones. The more you collect, the better is the life you lead later. After hearing the story, I decided to study in spite of all that odds I had to face. With a lot of determination and after facing many difficulties, I managed to finish school. The service station owner was also helpful. When I got good marks, he helped me pay my fees for automobile diploma. I continued to work while I learned. Later, I took a loan from the bank and started this work. By the grace of God, I am successful and have repaid my loan. I am a free person now. Madam, rich people are usually scared to start a new venture. They feel if the venture fails, they will lose their money. I had never anything to lose. I had learned this experience from my own experience too. Where is Gopal now? He followed another story of yours. Ram looked sad. Why? What happened? Gopal's state can also be explained by another story you told us. It seems there was a jackal in the desert. One morning he walked out and faced the sun. He saw his shadow was larger than him. It was so huge that he decided he would hunt for a camel in the afternoon meal. He spent the whole day searching for a camel and did not pay attention to the smaller animals he could have caught. He did not find one till evening. By then, his shadow was even smaller than him, so he started hunting for a mouse. Gopal was the same. He always tried to do the things beyond his capacity and failed miserably. He doesn't even want to work with me. Now he is a peon at in office. I was dumbstruck to hear how a small story I had told brought about so much of courage. I had never imagined while telling them that such a thing was possible. I am not even the original writer of these stories. I could only silently salute the person who thought of these stories first. Did he or she realize the effect they would have on two children after so many years? Chapter 14, Dead Man's Riddle. Often, when there are two or more brothers in a family, they want to divide their parents' property between them and get into arguments and court cases over these. In the village, the panchayat decides how the property should be divided. In my childhood, I used to attend meetings of panchayat with my grandfather where the division of some villagers' property would be discussed. The elders would assemble and call the brothers who were fighting over their property. If there were three brothers, they would make the three divisions of the property, each of approximately the same value. For example, each part of would contain a little bit of gold, some silver and vessels. The values of all articles in each group would be approximately fixed by the elders of the village. It was difficult to always make the value of each part equal to other brothers. In such a situation, the youngest brother would get to choose his part first. The logic behind it was that he had stayed the least number of days with his parents. In those days, villages, staying with parents was also considered an asset. The village elders were all respected and everyone knew they were impartial. Their decisions were final and no one went to court against them. Going to court was such matter was considered waste of time and energy. There is a saying that village if a two feuding parties approach court, both parties lose and only the advocate becomes rich. Once there was a such disagreement in the division of property of a certain family. The Sarpanch tried his best to make the brothers agree to a certain division, but they would just not accept the decision. Finally, Sarpanch Somgowda told a story which everyone listened to carefully. It seems a long time back, in our village itself, there lived a rich man. He had three sons who never agreed with their father about anything. The rich man had a friend called Sumant who was well educated and very wise. He would say, "Time will teach everything, don't be in a hurry." One day the old man died. He left 17 horses, lots of golds and land for his children. He wrote a will which was very strange. He divided the land and gold into three parts, but for the division of horses there was a riddle. Nobody could understand the riddle. The half of the total horses should be given to elder son. In the remaining half, two-thirds should be given to the second, and what remains out of two-thirds should be given to third son. 17 was a total number of horses. Half means eight and half horses to elder son. This means one had to kill a horse to divide it. Subsequently, two-third of eight would mean one more horse had to be killed. The old man loved his horse immensely and would never have wanted any of them to kill. So what did it mean? The brothers scratched their heads and for a few days over the will, when they could not come up with a solution, they showed the will to their father's friend. Sumant read it and smiled it. He replied, "It is very easy. Tomorrow morning I will come and divide the horse." The next day everybody assembled in the ground. All 17 horses were standing and Sumant came in one horse. He made his horse stand along with the other horse. "Now there are 18 horses. I am as good as your father. Let us divide the horses as per the will." But the sons objected. "You have added your horse to our horses. That was not father's wish." Sumant said, "Don't worry, wait until the division is over. I will take my horse back." Out of these 18 horses, as per the will, Half will go to elder son. Half of 18 is 9, so the elder one gets 9 horses. Now there are 9 remaining. Out of 9, 2/3 means 6 horses will go to second son. Now there are 3 remaining. 2/3 of 3 means 2 horses. Out of 3 will go to the third son. One horse is left, and which was not anyway not yours. It is mine, and I am taking it and going home. All the people who had assembled were puzzled. The 3 sons how did not know how the division took place. They went to Sumant and asked, "Uncle, how did you manage without killing any horse?" Sumanta smiled and said, "Experience has taught me many things in life. Your father also knew it. Many times a work may look impossible, but if someone gives the smallest suggestion, you can work on it. That is the reason your father wrote his will such a way that you were forced to take somebody's help and advice. You may think you know everything, but please remember you are still a student. Life is an eternal teacher provided you have an open mind." Som Gowda concluded, "That's the way elders have taught us lesson. Experience is the best teacher in life. Elders have seen many ups and downs in their lives and interacted with many people. During the process, they have acquired knowledge which can't be taught in a school or college. It has to be learned over a period of time. Now it is left to you people to make the decision." The 3 brothers, after listening to the story, agreed to the panchayat's division of their property. Chapter 15, I Will Do It. He was short, he was sharp, he was the brightest boy in his class. His seniors used to ask him to solve their difficulties in science. He could have gone unnoticed in a crowd, but once you asked him a question related to physics or math, there was a spark in his eyes. He could grasp theories of science and faster than the speed of light. He was from poor but educated family. His father was a high school teacher and an avid reader of English literature. He, like all the boys in his class, was trying to get admission into some engineering college. The brighter ones wanted to study in the Indian Institute of Technology or the IITs. There was an entrance test for IIT. This boy, along with his friend, applied to appear for the test. They did not have any special books for coaching. All the IIT aspirant would sit below the shade of a stone mandap close to Chanmudi Hills in a sleepy town of Mysore. He was the guide for the others. While the others struggled to solve the problem in the question paper, he would smile shyly and solve them in no time. He sat alone below the tree and dreamed of studying at IIT. It was the ultimate aim for the bright on at the day at that age, and it is still today. He was then only 16 years old. The day came. He came to Bangalore, stayed with some relative, and appeared for the entrance test. He did very well but would only say okay when asked. It was the opposite when he came to food. When he said okay, it implied too bad. When good, it implied okay. When he said excellent, implies good. His principle was never to hurt anyone. The IIT entrance results came. He had passed with a high rank. What a delight for any student! He was thrilled. He went to his father, who was reading a newspaper. "Anna, I passed the exam." "Well done, my boy. I want to join IIT." His father stopped reading and said, he lifted his head, looked at his boy, and said with a heavy voice, "My son, you are a bright boy. You know, our financial position. I have 5 daughters to be married off and 3 sons to educate. I am a salaried person. I cannot afford your expenses at IIT. You can stay in Mysore and study as much as you want." Indeed, it was a difficult situation for any father to say no to his bright son. But circumstances were like that. It was common then for the man to be the single earning member with a large family dependent on him. His father was sad he had to tell the bitter truth to his son, but it could not be helped. The boy had to understand the reality. The teenager was disappointed. It seemed his dreams had burnt to ashes. He was so near to his fulfilling his hope, yet so far his heart sank in sorrow. He did not reply. He never shared his happiness or helplessness with anybody. He was an introvert by nature. His heart was bleeding, but he did not get angry with anybody. The day came. His classmates were leaving for Madras, now Chennai. They were taking a train from Mysore to Madras. They had shared a good years in college and to school together. He went to them station to say goodbye and good luck for them at their future. At the station, his friends were already there. They were excited and talking loudly. The noise was like chirping of birds. They were all excited and discussing their new hostels, new courses, etc. He was not part of it, so he stood there silently. One of them noticed and said, "You should have made it." He replied, he did not reply. He only wished all of them. They waved at him and the train slowly left the platform. He stood there even after he could no longer see the train or the waving hand. It was the June of 1962 in Mysore city. Monsoon had set in and it was getting dark. It started to drizzle, yet he stood motionless. He said to himself without anger or jealousy, "All the students from IITs study well and do big things in life. But it is not the institution, ultimately, it is you and you alone who can change your life by hard work." Probably he was not aware that he was following the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. Your best friend is yourself and your worst enemy is yourself. Later, he worked very hard and focused on one thing and never bothering about his personal comforts. He shared his wealth with others. He never used the help of any caste, community, or political connections to go up in life. A son of school teacher showed other Indians it was possible to earn wealth legally and ethically. He built a team of people who were equally good. He became the pioneer of India's software industry and started the information technology wave. Today, he has become an icon of simplicity, uncompromising quality, and fairness, apart from being a philanthropist. He really believed his motto, powered by intellect and driven by values. He is none other than Infosys founder and present chairman, Nagvar Ram Rao Narayan Murthy. Chapter 16, The Rainy Day. When I was young, before a girl got married, her mother would usually give him some words of advice. They were usually like, "You must adjust to your new house and in laws, try to learn how they eat, cook their food, go out your way to be friendly and helpful to everybody," etc. My mother, Vimala Kulkarni, told me similar words when I got married. But along with this, she said something which helped me immensely in later life. She said, "In life, we never know when a rainy day will come and you might fall short of money. In order to be prepared for such situation, you should always save money from your salary, and if you are not earning, then from your husband's salary. If your salary is 1000 rupees, take 50 or 100 rupees and keep it separately. This money should not be used for buying ornaments or silk saris. When you are young, you want to spend money and buy many things, but remember, when you are in difficulty, only a few things will come for your help. Your courage, your ability to adjust to new situation and the money which you have saved. Nobody will come and help you." When I heard her advice, I laughed. I felt it was impossible that such a rainy day would ever come in my life. I was young and thought every day was a sunny day. But I always listened to my mother, so I started saving slowly. The money was kept safe in place my kitchen cupboard and I never counted it. After my marriage for a while, life was smooth in Bombay. We had a daughter and were happy like any other middle class family. We used to stay in a flat at Bandra. I used to work for Telco at Fort and Murthy at PCS at Nariman. One day my husband returned from office looking very worried. By nature, he is not too talkative and is reluctant to share his emotions, but that day he was different. I was making some chapatis in my kitchen and, "Why are you looking so worried?" I asked him. He replied, "Software is going to be the biggest new business in years to come. We have no dearth of intelligent people in our country. We have writing software requires a logical mind and hard work, which we can find plenty in India. I feel I should harness this talent. I want to start a software company." I was shocked. I had never imagined we would ever think of starting our own company. Both in my family, Murthy's, and there were not single person who was an entrepreneur. I had thought Murthy would work in PCS and I would work in telco forever and we would lead a quiet, contented life. My immediate reaction was no. Murthy started explaining his plans and visions for business to me. "You are fond of history, you must appreciate my reasoning. You know that we Indians misused the Industrial Revolution. That time we were ruled by foreigners. Now the world is on the threshold of an intellectual revolution. We make we must make full use of this. We have to bring this revolution to our country. If we miss this, we shall never get a chance to do well in life. I want to take this step not for money alone. This is one I desire that I had taken for a while now. Let me do it now. It is now or never. My mind went back to my childhood. One of our relatives had started something on his own. He ended up incurring a heavy loss. Finally, he had to sell his family property. So, for me, starting our own business was as synonymous with loss. I was afraid the same thing would happen to us. We did not have any property to sell in order to cover our loss. Apart from that, we had a daughter and I was confused. Probably Murthy read my mind. He said, "This is a new kind of industry. It is driven by intellectual and does not require large capital. I need your wholehearted support." There was a sincerity and honesty in his voice. I have always respected and appreciated his honesty. As I sat there wondering what was right, I smelled the chapatis burning in the kitchen. The smell reminded me that we have to have our dinner without chapatis that day. Still, I sat and measured the odd and consequences of the problem. Murthy had a large family and they were dependent on him. He had unmarried sisters. In such a situation, if he started a new company, our financial stability would be severely affected. I was worried, but I also had a lot of faith in him. I felt that unless I supported him wholeheartedly, he would feel uncomfortable starting a new venture like this. In business, there is always profit and loss. If we went into a loss, then we would lose our precious saving of years. Yet, when I thought about it in my heart, I was also sure that we would survive somehow. I asked him, "Are you alone in this?" Murthy rarely smiles. This time he smiled and replied, "No, six of my young colleagues are joining me. This is our joint chance to earn money legally and ethically. I have a dream that India should be a leader in this industry which will bring pride and revenue to our country. You have helped to me. Can you give me some money? If you don't help me now, my dream will remain unfulfilled." I knew that if I do not give him the money, he would not be able to start his company. At that moment, I remembered my mother's words: "Save some money and use it only externally essential situation." This one of those situations. Finally, I came to the decision. I went inside the kitchen and opened my rainy day saving box. I took out the money I had deposited and every month and counted it. They were 10,000 rupees. I took it, offered a brief prayer to God, and gave it to Murthy. "All the best, Murthy. That's all I can give you. With happiness, I will bear the responsibility of this new enterprise. By the way, what are you going to name this company?" "Infosys, and thank you for the support and the seed money. Be ready for the most bumpy ride in your life for the next few years." When I look back now, I realize that our lives changed completely because I had to listen my mother's valuable lesson. I often tell this story to my children and students. One never knows when a rainy day will come, and when it does, my mother's word will always stay true.
Chapter 17. Doing what you like is freedom. One day I was traveling by train from Bangalore to Belagaum. It is an overnight train and the only rail link between Bangalore and North Karnataka. I was traveling by second class as that's where I can meet lots of people who are eager to talk. I have noticed the more expensive the ticket, the lesser co-travelers speaker. As I settled down in my seat, I glanced at the opposite berth. There was a small family of husband, wife and son. The son was about 18 or 19 years old, probably going to college. The family was obviously quite well off. I sat and watched them. The parents were giving numerous instructions to their son. "It is very cold. Why don't you wear a sweater? Are you hungry? Shall I serve food? We have got three berths, lower, middle, and the upper. Which one you want to take? Have you bought your bathroom slippers? If you are going to bathroom, please use them." And so on. The young boy looked at ill ease at all their attention, particularly in front of a stranger, but was obeying, answering them reluctantly. Then the father asked the mother, "Have you bought some old clothes? I want to clean these seats. They look dirty." The mother answered, "How many times I have told you to make reservations early, but you never listened to me. If you had booked the tickets earlier, we could have gone by first class or second AC. The people like us travel in those compartments and they are maintained better, not like the second class where every Tom, Dick, and Harry travels." The father bowed his head and answered, "Nowadays there's so much rush for ticket for higher class and I did not realize it. Normally we travel by air, so I understand the situation. Unfortunately, Belgaum don't have any air connection. By now, since I knew they were also traveling up to Belgaum, we were going to be together till 8 o'clock the next morning. I struck up a conversation with them. 'Are you going to Belgaum for the first time?' They looked at me with some surprise, but the woman was eager to talk. 'Yes, we have never gone there before. My son had got admission in the Belgaum Medical College. We have heard it is a good college. Do you know anything about it?' 'Yes, it is a good college.' 'Yes, it is a good college. How do you know?' 'Because I belong to that area.' After this, they were eager to talk me as they wanted to know more about the town. The man introduced himself. 'I am Rao. I am a CA in Bangalore. This is my wife Ragini. She is a MA in home science. That's my son Puneet, who is going to be a medical student.' He gave me his card. By now, the train started moving. Even before it left Bangalore city, they had opened their dinner box. It was a huge tiffin carrier with many items placed in it. The mother laid table mats on the berth and placed steel plates. It was as if she was serving dinner at home. There were two sabjis, two kind of dal, roti, rice and a dessert. It was an 8-course meal. I watched them in amazement. The son sat down quietly for his meal, but before he could touch his plate, his mother said, "Take the Dettol soap, wear your bathroom slipper, carry this towel, wash your hands and come for dinner." When he left, his father explained to me, "Puneet is our only son. We have brought up him very well. He wanted to study medicine in some college in Bangalore, but unfortunately, he got admission in Belgaum. We have never sent him alone anywhere. This is the first time we are leaving. We were thinking if the hostel does not suit him, my wife will shift to Belgaum and we will rent a small house there for next 5 years. I will stay in Bangalore and meet them once a week. For children's sake, parents have to make sacrifices." His voice broke and I could see tears in the lady's eyes. I could understand their pain at their only son leaving home. It is always difficult time for parents, but it's also inevitable. How long can you keep birds in cages when their wings are strong and they are ready to fly? We can give our children only two things in life which are essential: strong and powerful wings. Then they may fly anywhere and live independently. Of all luxurious life, in the greatest luxury is getting the freedom of right kind. Now the mother joined in. They were clearly very upset and worried. They wanted to share their grief with somebody, even though I was unknown to them. Our son is very dear to us. I was a lecturer in college, but I left my job after his birth. Many of my colleagues have become principal in other colleges, but I was determined to bring my son very well. The husband said, "I had a good practice in Tumkur district and I own a plenty of land there, but I decided to shift Bangalore for Puneet's studies. I visit my farm once in a while. I bought an apartment next to his school. I don't go anywhere without my family. I take his lunch every day to school. Then I talk to his teacher regarding his performance. I have enrolled them in different evening classes. He learns chess as it is good for brain, karate to protect himself, and a cricket which is a well respected game." I could not control laughter. I felt pity for the child and I asked, "What about music, general knowledge, and debating?" "Oh, we don't require all these. When he born, decided he should become a doctor." "What is his choice?" "Our choice is his choice. He is only a child. What does he know about the outside world?" By the time that child came back and they started eating their dinner. After finishing, the parents decided he should sleep on lower berth. Immediately a bed was made by father. He spread a snow white bedsheet, an air pillow, and a boy was made to lie down and was covered with a Kashmiri shawl. "I hope you don't mind. We want to switch off the lights. My son cannot sleep with the lights on." The gentleman switched off the light without even waiting for my reply. I was left sitting alone without dinner and was not feeling at least sleepy.
I was wondering what Puneet's mother would do when he got married. They seemed to have forgotten he was an independent person who could take his own decisions with some love and guidance. Instead, they were bombarding him with their own ideas and opinion. Too much of affection can become a golden noose around the neck. Puneet will never be a confident person. It was only 10 at night, I never sleep early. Even in the partial darkness, I spotted an old friend walking down the passage. We were delighted to meet each other so unexpectedly. Come on, why are you sitting in the dark? She asked. Are you planning to steal somebody's purse? How can you sleep at 10 o'clock? Come to my compartment, it is in the next one. Let us talk for some time. It is very hard to catch you in the Bangalore. She started laughing loudly at her own joke. I had a quiet conversation in North Karnataka and would mean a high pitched talk in a sophisticated society. I have reservation for this compartment. Don't worry, we will tell the ticket collector. In my compartment, one berth is vacant. My loyalty switched immediately and I followed her. There was a loud laughter and joking going on other compartment. Some other friends of mine were also there. We sat and remembered our college days and made fun of each other. In the midst of us middle-aged people, there was a young boy sitting. He too was very jolly with enormous energy. When all of us opened our tiffin box, the boy offered everyone bananas from his bag. Though he did not know any of us, he looked confident and happy. I asked him, What is your name? Where are you going? My name is Sharad. I am going to Belgaum. Why are you going there? I have got a seat in the medical college there and I am going to join my class. Are you going for the first time? Do you have anybody with you? Yes, I am going for a first time, but I am alone. I forgot my tiffin box. Suddenly I thought of Puneet who was of same age. Where are your parents? My father is a postman and mother is a school teacher. I come near from a village near Kolar. How many siblings do you have? I am the only child. Did you never get lonely? No, since my both parents were working, I knew all the neighbors. After school, I would visit one house every day. All those children I used to visit became like my brothers and sisters. I wanted to know what all subjects he studied in school. My father being a postman, I learned cycle at a very young age. In the evenings, I did some extracurricular activities. My father always told me that in life extremes are bad. It is better if one takes in middle path, so one should know a little bit of music, sports, social activities. This helped me a lot. Now I can travel anywhere without a problem because I know four languages: English, Kannada, Hindi and Telugu. I can swim and sing. I was in NCC, so I traveled to many places with my batch. How did you do in your exam? I think I did fairly well. I got a seat in Belgaum Medical College, didn't I? Is it not very expensive? It is expensive. My parents have sacrificed a lot and I have taken a bank loan. I am confident I will repay the loan once I start working. Tell me, for a young person, what do you think it is the most important? It is freedom. Freedom to choose your own life, freedom to pursue your own interest, freedom to enjoy your own likes, provided that they are not harmful to you and society. I feel I was very fortunate to grow up with so much freedom like a tree in the forest. Somehow, I felt I had seen a stunned bonsai plant in the previous compartment. Chapter 18, Gauramma's Letter. In India, particularly in villages, even a few decades back, women without children were looked down upon. Such women were not invited for naming ceremonies and were taunted as barren women. Nobody understood the hurt and trauma they underwent. When I was a child, I had a teacher called Gauramma. She was kind and warm. She was also tall, beautiful, and always cheerful. She used to teach us Sanskrit. She was a great teacher and would tell us lot of story in class. Students usually took Sanskrit as optional language in order to score marks like math. They were not interested in the story. They only wanted to get good grades and were not interested in Gauramma's old epics. As soon as the class was over, students used to escape from her elaborate stories, but I always loved listening to stories, so I would sit and waltz with her for hours. Storytelling is an art which is not everyone is good at. There are many ways to tell a story. You have to change the story. You have to change your voice depending on the circumstances and describe the people you have seen. Gauramma described Lord Krishna as a tall, handsome person with a dark complexion, mischievous smile, and a kind heart. Later, when I saw Mahabharata on TV, the actor who was playing Krishna's role was exactly how she described. When I saw the Ramayana on the TV, the actor looked very different from I imagined the Lord Rama to be like. The storyteller influences your imagination on what character in the story look like. Gauramma would pick up many stories from Katha Sarit Sagar, literally meaning ocean of stories, and recreate the scenes for me. For us, time would stop and we would be immersed in the story until the peon of the school would come and harshly tell us, "Time is up, except you two only, and only the school ghost is here. You may not be scared of the ghost, but I am. Kindly vacate the room." Then Gauramma and I would get up and depart with a heavy heart. This went on till I was in class 7. Then I joined another school. For a few days, I missed Gauramma, but soon I forgot her in my new activities. Once a while, I met her at marketplace, and she would affectionately ask about my studies. At home, whenever I got lost in a storybook, I would be teased as Gauramma's only true student. My mother would tell me so sadly, "Poor Gauramma. She is so beautiful, so good natured, but luck is not on her side. Her husband has left her because she cannot bear a child. He has married another woman. The woman had produced children, but in no way she is matched to Gauramma." Then I would understand the reason behind the sadness in Gauramma's eyes. Time flew by as swift and light as a straw. I did my engineering, got married, had children, and later became the chairperson of Infosys Foundation. I toured the length and breadth of my country and many celebrities and many poor people. My life became public. I was often invited to colleges, universities to deliver lectures. Once I went to a university and delivered a lecture. After it was over, students gathered to ask some question. Though it was getting late for me for my next program, and since I love talking to students, I remained there answering their questions. I feel that students are like my young friends, brighter than me but with less experience. Students also ask me a lot of questions about my young days so that they can relate to my life. One bright girl in the crowd asked me a question which left me dazed. It was a very difficult question. When you are faced with some difficulties, how do you solve them? Do you avoid them? I did not know how to answer her but was tempted to ignore her, but my heart would not let me do that. She was a girl of 20, bright and simple and direct and bold with no hesitation. When she saw me looking at her blankly, she repeated the same question. Somehow, looking at her, I felt I was looking at myself when I was at 20-year-old. In a fraction of a second, an answer came to my mind. Children, in answer to this question, I will tell you a story. It is from Ramayana. In the battlefield of Lanka, during the battle between the Ram, Lakshman, and Ravan, Lakshman became unconscious. He needed the medicine plant Sanjeevani to revive. Sanjeevani was only available in the Dronagiri mountain. These mountains were huge and far away. The only person who could do this job was Hanuman. Hanuman flew to the Drona mountains, but alas, he was unable to recognize which was Sanjeevani plant. Time was running short, the only way to take the entire mountain along with the plants to Ram. The mountain was huge, so how could he lift him? But Hanuman had the gift to increase his body size. He became higher than the mountain till it was like pebble for him. Then he put mountain on his palm and went back to the Lanka. The rest of the story all of you know. The girl was impatient and restless. I asked you a different question, but you told me an old story which everyone knows. Have patience, I have not yet completed my answer. When you come across difficulties, you have to grow bigger than the problem. You have that capacity within you, but you are not aware of it. If you become bigger, difficulties will look smaller than you and you can solve them easily. If you become smaller, the difficulties they will look like mountain and crush you. This is the theory I have followed in my life. The students were pleased and I stopped with my answer and there was a lot of applause. I stopped with them with the middle of their clapping with moist eyes and a heavy voice. The credit for this answer should go to my teacher Gauramma. When I was young, she taught me this lesson. She used to tell me many ancient stories which are priceless in their wisdom. To understand them, we need great storytellers like Gauramma. It was she who taught me to love stories when I was young. The function got over and I returned to Bangalore. As usual, I became busier than ever. I forgot about the whole thing. One day there was a letter. My secretary came up to me and said, Madam, it seems to be from somebody who knows you well. Probably this is a personal letter, so I did not read it. She placed the letter in front of me and left. I was wondering who was that. It was written in a shaky handwriting. When I looked it closely at the name and the bottom, it was surprised. It was from Gauramma. It said, I think you know my husband left me long back and everyone used to make fun of me and called me a barren woman. Everyone looked down me and called me a story teacher than Sanskrit teacher. Sometimes people used to tell me that instead of telling story to children, I should make money by giving private tuition class. I did not because I believed in my work. I did not because I believed in my work. I was always humiliated because I could not bear any children. You know, my husband married a second time and had his own children. These children got into a bad habits and brought shame and debt to him. He used to come and cry at my doorsteps. At that time, I helped him with my savings. I could not understand why Gauramma had written this personal story to me. I was aware of the situation, but why she had written it all to me now? But patience is one quality I have acquired along with my grey hair. It told me that to complete reading the letter. Today, my husband brought me the newspaper and showed it to me. He said that you mentioned my name in public and contributed your success to my storytelling. For a minute, I froze. I am not your biological mother, but you behaved as if you were my child. People have children, but they fight and bring disgrace and shame to their parents. My husband felt ashamed about his own children, whereas I felt proud about my child, whom I taught selflessly and who listened wholeheartedly. You made me proud. Now I don't have any complaint with God. Tears welled up in my eyes and fell on the letter, mingling with the ink. I was unable to read further. Chapter 19. Who is the Great? Whenever I teach my class, I make sure that everyone participates in the question answer session. I normally teach for 40 minutes and the last 20 minutes I keep for open debates, questioning and answers. This way the students learn to express their opinion in front of the others and the teacher also understands how much the students have learned. Many times I have learned a lot from my students during these sessions. Sometimes their questions are so difficult that I am not able to answer. Then I tell them that I will refer to my books and answer the next day. Frequently after the class, I tell a story which leads to a debate. Once I made a statement that many times there is no perfect solution for a given problem. No solution is also a solution. Everything depends on how you look at it. We make judgment on others depending upon what we think of them. My students immediately objected to this statement and said, Convince us. Okay, I will tell you a simple story. This happened many centuries back. There was a beautiful girl called Ratna Prabha who was rich and bright. She completed her studies and asked her teacher, What shall I pay you as Guru Dakshina? Her teacher replied, Your father has already paid me. You don't need to worry. Ratna Prabha insisted that the teacher was upset. He said to himself, I want to test the courage of this girl. Let me put a difficult situation which she might not be able to which she not be able to fulfill. Then she will not trouble me anymore. So he said, Ratna Prabha, on a moonless night, you should deck yourself with a lots of jewelry and come to my house all alone. There was a forest between Ratna Prabha's house and the teacher's. The road was very bad. There were many animals in the forest and a river too. Ratna Prabha thought for a minute and then went away. The teacher was happy that he had silenced his student. Finally, it was a moonless night. Ratna Prabha decked herself with expensive jewelry and was about to set her teacher's house. Her father saw this and was very upset. He asked where she was going, and Ratna Prabha narrated the story. Her father was taken aback. He said, "Your teacher is a nice person, you must have troubled him, which is why he told you to do this and just to teach you a lesson. I know him very well, I will explain to him tomorrow. Don't go, he will understand and he will pardon you. You are like a daughter to him." Ratnaprabha did not listen. She insisted on going all alone as she had promised she would. There were many animals in the forest, but she had made up her mind and kept walking. Suddenly, she was stopped by a young thief. He had never seen so many expensive ornaments and was delighted by the amount of money he would take that night. He stopped her and told her intentions. Ratnaprabha was unperturbed. She said, "I promised my teacher I would go to him wearing all these ornaments. I will give them to you when I come back from my teacher's house. I always keep my word." The thief was surprised and let her go, but he followed her secretly to know what happened next. Ratnaprabha knocked the door of the teacher's house. He opened the door and was surprised and sad to see her. "I thought you would take it as a joke. It was only to discourage you. I never thought of you would come here against all the odds. Please go back home. I will bless you, my child. You are a woman of your word." Ratnaprabha turned to go back when the thief appeared before her. She said to him, "I promised to give you all ornament. Please take them." The thief smiled and said, "You are an unusual woman. I don't want anything from you. It is difficult to meet people like you." Ratnaprabha came home. Her father was waiting at the doorstep. She described everything. Her father was proud and happy. He said, "You are courageous and you kept your word. Come inside and take rest. You have traveled a lot." When I completed the story, my students were not impressed. They said, "What is the great in the story? There is a headstrong girl, a foolish teacher, an impractical thief, and an irresponsible father. What do we have to learn from this?" I told them, "That is how you view the things. I understand the story in a different way. Courageous Ratnaprabha, kind-hearted teacher, generous thief, and a responsible father who values his daughter's word. What do you think was the greatest in the story?" A lot of noise broke out in the classroom. The students started debating and arguing among themselves. I was smiling and looking at them. One group got up and said, "Madam, we think Ratnaprabha was greatest because she was aware all of the difficulties and yet did not change her mind. She was opposed by her father, scared by the thief, worried about the animals in the forest, but still believed that Guru Dakshina should be given to the teacher. We only hope, madam, you will not ask such a Guru Dakshina from us." The whole class bursted into laughter. I did not answer. Another group immediately got up and argued. "We don't agree. There was nothing great about Ratnaprabha. She was headstrong. The thief was the greatest person because a thief usually robs the people without asking their victims or worrying about what will happen to them afterwards. There is some bond between the teacher and Ratnaprabha between and her father. They had commitment through some each other, whereas the thief was not part of the system. So we think that thief was the greatest personality." Before they could complete, another group got up and said, "The teacher was the greatest. He told Ratnaprabha not to worry about the fees, but when she was adamant, he put her into a difficult situation. When she came, he was surprised and worried. He did not ask anything else. He blessed her wholeheartedly." The last group did not agree because they believed the father was the greatest. They argued the father allowed Ratnaprabha to take her own decision. How many fathers even today allow their daughters to do that? Madam, in this class, how many girls can take independent decisions? Things became too noisy after this because the debate had now become personal. I realized it was time for me to interfere. I said, "There is no one person in the story who was great. It is the way we look at it. Similarly, whenever any problem arises, we should view it from different angles. The decision each of us arrives will be different. Whenever we blame somebody for a minute, we should enter into the person's mind and try to understand why he did that. Only then we should take a decision." Now my entire class was agree with me. Chapter 20, Ballu's Story. Ballu is my cousin. In no way he is extraordinary, yet he is very special to me. That is because he can always see the lighter side of any situation, however difficult. Whenever I talk to him, I feel so life is so simple and I have been complicating it unnecessarily. Once a friend of mine who was working in a bank was transferred to a small village in a forest area. He was worried about his family, children and their education. He could not resign as he would not got any other job at that age. One day while he had come to my house and was telling me his worries, Ballu arrived. He heard the problem and started laughing. If I were you, I would have accepted this happily. You can leave your children with your parents. Grandparents look after the children very well and also teach better lesson. Is it not true, Sudha? Without waiting for my answer, he continued. Of course, of late, your health has not been good. In this city, it is difficult to walk. The congestion and the traffic chokes your throat. The best cure for this problem is to go for a 5 kilometer walk every day. How will you do that here? That is why a village is the best place for you. There are trees everywhere and air is fresh. Take the advantage of the situation and enjoy it. Your wife can visit you once a month and you can come here once. That means you will be able to meet your family twice a month. Sometimes it is better to be away from the family for a while as you get a lot of more respect. This is my personal experience. Ballu finished in a hushed tone. My friend certainly looked more at ease after listening to Ballu's speech. That is the way Ballu speaks. If somebody fails in the exam, Ballu had a resume consolation. In life, some failures are essential. Repeated success makes a person arrogant, whereas occasional failures are essential to become mature. Have you not heard famous words? Try and try and try again. You will succeed at last. Don't fail next time. Start studying now. Parents don't always like this advice of his, but it always goes down very well with the students. Other cousin of me, Prasad, is always complaining. People cheat me a lot. I want to help everybody, but people take advantage of me. Ballu was ready with a clever answer. There was a one person who used to complain the whole day from morning to evening that he had a headache, a stomachache, or a leg pain. I asked him, "Show me where you are aching." He pointed all over his body with a finger. Then I told him, "You have a pain in your finger and not in the other part of the body." Prasad, when you say that everyone is cheating you, then you have a problem, not others. Ballu is a good narrator, and once he starts describing something, he forgets the time. That is the reason why he is very popular with the children. He exaggerates his stories, is never punctual, but still I enjoy his company. He is not cunning and would never hurt anyone. He can live without food but not without talking. His children have grown up now and they have done very well in their life. Baloo jokes about this too. They have done well because I did not help them in studies. He can laugh as much as himself as at others. Baloo has traveled to many places. He has a story to tell about every place he had visited, but I usually take them with a pinch of salt. His son worked in the US. When he had a baby, he invited his parents for the US for a year. Before Baloo left, the whole village knew he was going abroad. After he came back, he summoned everyone in the village under the big banyan tree and said, "I want to describe my experience in the US. Today, going abroad is not anything great, but not too many people from our village had gone. The ones who had gone did not describe their stay in too many details. They just say, they just said this is a different country with a different value system. But Balu was not like that. He started describing his stay endlessly from the day he arrived. I knew Balu's nature, so before he went to tell at the villagers, I said to him, "You don't have control on your tongue. Anybody can make out of you that you are lying. There is a method to describe and limit to exaggeration. If you want to say some boy is tall, you can say he is perhaps 6 feet 4 inches. But you will say the 10 feet tall, which is not possible. People make fun of you. Do you not underestimate the villagers? They know about America. They have seen it on TV." Balu did not argue. He said, "I agree, but when I start talking, I lose control over my tongue. Exaggeration become a habit. Will you do me a favor? When I start exaggerating, you pull my shirt. Then I will understand and correct myself." We agreed. Balu started describing on New York City with its different tall buildings. But one of the villagers got up and said, "We have seen this city many times TV after 11 September. Don't exaggerate. Tell us something about their method of agriculture, their fodder and grass. Then we can compare them from our ways." Balu said, "Oh, I saw their fields and the grass were almost 5 feet tall." I pulled his shirt. He realized he was talking too much. Immediately he said, "No, no, the grass is very thin." Somebody asked, "What do you mean, very thin?" "It was thin as the hair's width." Again I pulled my shirt, but I was so exasperated that I pulled it very hard and it tore. Balu, for once, did not know what to say, but I could hear people talking. After all, it is Balu's version of America. The real version may be different. Balu's wife is very quiet, which is understandable. If two people talk too much, it can get difficult to live together. Once she was unwell and had a high fever. Ballu talks a lot, but in such situation, he gets scared easily. He was worried and called me up. "Get a doctor immediately. My wife is running a very high temperature." "What do you mean by high temperature? How much is it?" "Oh, it must be about 500 degrees. Then you should call not a doctor. You better call a firefighter. Kindly check it with a thermometer. It must not be more than 106 degrees." Once we were sitting and chatting when a stranger entered. Many people were aware that Infosys Foundation helped students to study further if they do not have funds. With help of foundation, many children have graduated and stood on their feet. Whenever I am in villages, parents of such children come and see me. After talking to them, if I feel the case is genuine, we help them. This stranger had came with a similar request. I had a detailed talk with him and was convinced his son needed a help. I told him, "After I go back to my office, I will send you the check." Ballu called me aside and said, "How can you say that? Do you remember what may happen tomorrow? Will you remember your promise? There is a gap between today evening and tomorrow morning. Life is uncertain, anything can happen. If you want to give anything, you must give him immediately. Time is never in your hands. On the contrary, all of us are living at the mercy of our time." "Ballu, I don't have a checkbook with me." "That is your mistake. You must carry the checkbook and cash when you travel for this purpose. Many times, poor people may not even have an account in their post office or bank." I thought that Ballu was only an uneducated, hilarious, and a comic man. But I was wrong. He taught me a great lesson. When donating, don't think twice or put it off another day. Nobody has conquered time. Time is also not in anybody's hand.
Chapter 21. A for Honesty. The American education system at the university level is different from ours. There, the final marks are based on the average marks of three examinations held earlier in the semester. As a result, students have to study and do well consistently, and there is not much pressure during the final exam. There is also a great student teacher interaction in the system. As a teacher, I have seen that sometimes even a bright student may not do well because of the pressure of the final test. There are other ways to examine the depth of the knowledge of the student, like surprise exams, open book exams, oral exams, etc. The examination should not scare the students. Instead, it should measure their knowledge fairly and give marks accordingly. This kind of system requires more number of teachers for students. However, this is very difficult to achieve in India, where there are large number of students. There is also large pressure of student on from the parent and society to perform well. My son is studying in a college in the US. He loves computer science immensely and always puts in a lot of hard work when he studies it. One day he called me after his midterm exams. I could make out of his voice that he was very sad. He told me, "I did not do my exams well. It is not that I did not know the answer, because it's digit 8 I assumed as 6 and did the entire calculation based on that. I prepared so well and now I know I will not do well. I am feeling very depressed." As a teacher, I don't give too much importance to marks because I am aware of such situations. Many a time, I have seen children who are really good in subjects are unable to answer questions due to various factors. So I consoled him. "Don't worry, so what? You have lost the battle, but you have won the war.
Examinations are not the only index in life. Keep courage, face reality, and don't be negligent while reading the question. Good luck for next time. He was not at all pleased to hear my words. You talk like a moral science teacher, Amma. It is very competitive here and difficult to achieve anything in such an atmosphere. You are a teacher and you only give grades. You don't sit for exams, so you do not know the difficulties of student. I knew he was sad. My consolation did not help him. But he had forgotten that once upon a time I had also been a student and had passed through the same passage. After a few days, I got another call from him. There was a joy and great enthusiasm in his voice. Suddenly, the dark winter days had converted into bright sunny days. Amma, I got grade A in that subject which I did not do well in. How come? I was very surprised. It is a very funny thing. After the exam, I was talking to professor and we were discussing on various topics. When I got my papers, I saw I had good marks for the question which I had answered wrongly. My other friends said that professor must have made mistake. Don't tell him. Keep quiet. Getting a good grade is more important in this competitive world. What did you do? I asked anxiously. I thought for a while, then I realized grades are important, but honesty is even more important. You taught me when I was little boy. Do you remember, Amma? Once shopkeeper mistook 50 rupees for 100 rupees and gave change for 100. At that time we did not have much money, but you still sent me back to the shop to return extra money. At that age, I was so reluctant to go and return the change, but you were strict with me and said if I didn't, I would have to go without dinner. Somehow I was unable to keep quiet about Professor's mistake. I wrote an email to saying him but that I did not deserve those marks. But his reply was even more surprising. What was that? He replied, I have not given marks by mistake, it was deliberate. After the exams, I was talking to you, and my constant interaction with you throughout the semester had convinced me of the depth of the knowledge and your passion for the subject. Mistakes do happen because the oversight or tension. That is the reason I gave you some marks for that question. After all, exams should measure the depth of your knowledge. My eyes filled with the tears on hearing this story. I was happy not because he had got an A grade, but because he practiced what he believed in. Many of my own students have behaved in similar way, though they have lost a lot in the process. To some people, it may seem to be stupidity, but I am sure good values they have learned will help them in any crisis.
Chapter 22, A Lesson in Ingratitude. I was attending a seminar on how to eliminate poverty. For some reasons, such seminars always seem to be held in five-star hotels. I really do not know why they have to be organized in the most expensive places. After attending the seminar, I was standing in the lobby of the hotel when I saw a middle-aged person in Armani suit with a pipe in his hand. His perfume was expensive and very strong. I could smell it from a considerable distance. He was talking on his mobile and probably waiting for his car. I looked at him and felt sure I had seen him somewhere earlier. He finished his call and stared at me. Both of us were trying to place at each other. Suddenly, I realized he was my classmate from 30 years back. His name was Suresh. I asked, Are you Suresh, who was my classmate? He said, I was wondering, are you Sudha? We started laughing. It had been 30 years since we last met. Both of us had put weight and become different to look at from our college days. Suresh and I had gone to the same college where we knew each other fairly well for 4 years. We had attended many lab classes together where he was my lab partner. I asked him, I have not met you for a long time. The last I heard you were in Bombay. What are you doing here? Yes, I live in Bombay. I have my own business there. By the grace of God, I am doing very well. Why don't we meet sometime and talk about the old days? By the way, where are you going? Can I drop you? I agreed immediately because my driver was on leave. By then, his Mercedes Benz had arrived at the hotel door and we got into the car. Suresh started explaining. I own a few companies in Bombay and Bangalore. I am into medical transcription. I also train people and send them abroad for software jobs. Now there is a dearth of teachers in UK. I want to train teachers and send them.
This is a very lucrative job as there are not many overheads. I heard from many people you have become a teacher and a social worker. I felt very sad for you. You could have done well in business. You were one of the brightest in the class. He looked genuinely sad at my choice and profession. To console him, I said, "Don't look so sad. I took up this profession out of choice, not of compulsion. Do you know, Suresh? Doing what you like is freedom, liking what you do is happiness. If you look at it that way, I am very happy." By then, we had reached my office. Before I got off the car, Suresh gave me his visiting card and insisted I come to his house for dinner or breakfast. One Sunday I was free and I remember Suresh's invitation. I called up his home and his secretary told me that he was in Bombay. She fixed up a breakfast for the next Sunday. She also said she would send a car to pick me up as it was difficult to locate the house. That Sunday morning, a driver came with a Toyota car and I got into it. I started chatting with the driver after some time. He was very talkative as he knew I was his boss classmate. Suresh's house was 60 km away from Bangalore city. It was a farmhouse on the bank of river Kaveri. It was inside a forest and spread over 20 acres of land. There they grew fruits and vegetables without using chemical fertilizers. Madam, the driver told me, is very conscious about health and has got special gym and swimming pool made. Suresh had another house in Indiranagar in the heart of Bangalore city. They visited this farm only on weekends and invited special guests there. I asked him, "How long have you been working for Suresh?" "Oh, I have been with him for last 20 years. Actually, I was his father-in-law's driver. He was a businessman in Bombay and Madam, his only daughter. I can call Madam by her first name if I want to. I have known them for that long, but I don't do that." I could make out a sense of belonging and a shade of pride on the driver's face. When I reached the house, I realized the driver had not exaggerated in his description of place. It was entering like a place. There were 5 or 6 guest rooms, a huge hall, a large dining room, spacious courtyards, all built in traditional Indian style. There were many servants in uniform. Now I could understand how zamindars and pretty kings lived in old days. Suresh came in 2 minutes. He was dressed in silk. He looked very pleased to see me. "Welcome to our small abode. I am very happy you could make it. Let us go to the living room." His living room was full of statues, paintings, Persian carpets, and chandeliers. There were silk covered sofas made out of sandalwood. I felt I had entered a museum and not someone's house. "Tell me, Suresh, how you made your journey from college to this place." I remembered Suresh came from a very poor family. His father was a cook and his family had many children. He was unable to educate his son. A kind hearted gentleman knew Suresh's father. He offered a room and food for Suresh in his own house. His son was also studying with us. Our college provided Suresh a full of scholarship. We all knew his financial situation and we would help him in many ways as possible. We used to contribute money for him to buy books. Even the librarian went out of his way to give special concessions to him. Suresh was fairly good student, hardworking and very shy. He hardly spoke with us. So I wanted to know how had he become affluent talkative Suresh. After college, I went to Bombay in search of work. I got a small job. I worked very hard as I knew then that to come a life you require talent, hard work, aggression and connections. I had the first two but had to build up the later two qualities. Later, I met Veena, my wife, whose father helped me a lot, and we started different business. Today, I am well off. I helped out my family in various ways. I came from poor family. I bought lands, shops, built houses, which I gave to my parents, brothers, and sisters. Everyone now owns 2 cars and is well off. I am very happy that I have done my duty towards my family. What about your children? I have 2 daughters, both of them are studying in England. One is studying Indian culture and other is doing home science. Do you know any good boys who are well off and handsome for my daughters? But they should not want to stay with their parents. They must be either independent or live with us. You must be knowing some eligible men. You meet so many people. Suresh, the people I meet are poor, helpless and destitute.
or I meet students, I don't know the kind of people you are talking about. By that time, his wife called us for breakfast. The food was served in silver plates. Veena looked very beautiful and young. Only when she came near me did I realize that she was old as I was. She had hidden her age with a lot of clever makeup. Suddenly, I remembered the gentleman with whom Suresh stayed in our college, our librarian, and the rest of the students in our college. Suresh, do you ever go to college after you left? Do you remember our librarian, the principal, our batchmates? With a grim look on his face, Suresh replied, "No, I never went to college, nor I have met any of them. Some classmates I have bumped into accidentally. I have invited them here. I never felt like going back to the college." "What about Mr. Rao? You stayed in his house. Did you not meet him any time?" "No, I feel everyone in the college helped me because they wanted to feel better about themselves. After all, I was a very good student. I am convinced that people help others only with a selfish motive. They want to say, I brought up a person, that is the reason why I never felt like meeting any one of them." Still, I persisted. "I heard Mr. Rao's financial condition is not good." Suresh replied emotionlessly, "Yes, that was bound to happen. He fed so many unwanted students who were not good in studies or hardworking. How long he continued like that?" I remember the institution which gave him free scholarship, the librarian who helped him, Mr. Rao who was his host for 5 years. They were all good, kind people, but Suresh refused to recognize them. What was great about helping your own sisters and brothers? Giving them two cars and a few houses is not philanthropy. Helping somebody who is needy and without expecting anything from them in return is real philanthropy. In life, you must help others so that they can live independently. Gratitude is the highest form of education, but Suresh never learned that. Without receiving any help from others, he could not have reached the position he was in that day. When climbing the ladder, it is very easy to kick those below, but one must not forget that you cannot stay at the top forever. The higher you go, the longer is the fall. I did not feel like eating breakfast from the silver plate that day. Chapter 23, My Biggest Mistake. In my computer science, once I gave a very tough problem to my students. Programming is an art to some extent. When the same problem is given, different students use different methodologies to arrive at the same result. I never insist on a single method and allow my students and their freedom. This problem was very difficult and I myself took almost a week to solve it. When I brought my solution to the class, my student wanted to check it. I gave my diskette to one of them, Nalini, and said, "Please copy this program to your diskette and return mine. This is the only copy I have, so be careful." Everyone gathered around. Nalini inserted the diskette into the computer drive. While she was talking to me, by mistake she formatted the floppy. Formatting is nothing but clearing all the information on the diskette. Everybody was stunned. Then they looked at me. Nalini volunteers. They were aware that I had spent one whole week trying to find the solution to this problem. For a while, I was very upset, but after 5 minutes, I cooled down and smiled. A smile can make the tension disappear in the best medicine in a friendship. After all, my students are my young friends. When I smiled, a bubble of tension broke up. I got up from my chair. Nalini was sobbing. "Madam, I am very sorry. I did not do it purposely. Please forgive me." "I know you did not do it on a purpose, Nalini. None of my students can do such a things. Accidents do not require an invitation. Anybody can commit mistakes. If someone says that he never ever committed mistake, then he must be a robot, not a human being. Even our gods and our great rishis committed mistakes. Let us put our heads together and see if we can redo the program." Somebody asked me, "Madam, how can you be cool when you have spent so much time on that?" "Yes, I am aware of it. I will somehow steal some time and try to write the program again. I am cool because I also committed similar mistake when I was young." My students immediately switched the topic from computer science to storytelling. I told them my story. When I was young, I was very sensitive about what people said about girls. If they said girls cannot do that, immediately I used to feel I should do it, just to prove them wrong.
I wanted to show to the world that girls can do everything. Today, I laugh at this logic. Men can do certain things well and women other things. Men and women are complementary to each other. One need not to prove one's strength. That time I was working in a computer software firm as a system analyst. It was the way back when a computer hardware was not advanced. Today you have a tiny floppy of 3.5 inches. At my time, huge 15 kg heavy tandem disk drive was used. Casually my boss made a comment. One day, this disk is very heavy and only men can carry it. That remark made me upset a lot and I told him, I will carry it and show you tomorrow. The disc was a bit like gramophone but very heavy and large. It contained vital information about the company like its finances, employee details, etc. I took the disc and walked to the boss's room. It was very heavy but I did not show the emotions. Emotions. I believed strongly that showing emotion on your face is a sign of weakness. Today, I feel one should be as transparent as possible. Seeing me walk in the desk, my boss was surprised. How did you manage to bring this? He asked. Without thinking in my happiness at having proved him wrong, I lifted my hand and let go the desk. In a fraction of a second, it fell and broke into the pieces. The noise could be heard throughout the office. Everyone turned to look at me. It was the biggest mistake anyone had committed ever in the history of the company. It was an unforgivable error. The company's entire vital data was wiped out in a minute. I stood there dumbstruck. Because of my foolishness, everyone was going to suffer. An employee should always work for the betterment of the company, but what I have done? I was so numb that I would even cry. I went back to my desk and sat quietly. After thinking a while, I knew what should I do. I took a blank sheet of paper and wrote my resignation on it. That was the only way I felt I could atone for my mistake. I went to my boss's chamber and gave him the letter. Then I stood there, my head bowed in shame. He read the letter carefully and then he tore it up. He said, everybody commits mistakes. I took a backup of the information before even you lifted it. The data is still intact in the storeroom. You don't have to worry. Repentance is itself a punishment, and you have repented enough. You should not be so sensitive. Sensitive people suffer a lot in life. Go and do your work. I did not have any words to say him. Now I looked at Nalini and told her, it's also my mistake. I should have made a copy of such important program. Please do not worry. I will rewrite the program as still I have some notes at home. That incident taught me that when you become a leader, you should be kind and forgiving to subordinates. It is not fear that binds to your boss. Affection and openness and the appreciation qualities builds a long-lasting relationship. We spend most of our time at workplaces. This time should be spent in happiness and not in blaming each other. My student broke into applause. Last chapter. The secret. In my class, about 40% of the students are girls and 60% are boys. When I studied in engineering 35 years back, I was the only girl in the course. I could see only boys and more boys everywhere. Today, that trend has changed. People often ask me how I managed, but when I look back, I feel it was not very difficult. Having a girl in the class was unusual for boys. Initially, I was the target of lot of teasing, but over a period of time, they became my friends. One day in the class, I was teaching and the students got into an argument. This happens often and I always allow them to speak. Normally, this happens in the last class of the semester. I call it a free days and there isn't no studies at all. An argument had broke out between girls and boys about who was better. This is a very juicy topic and there's absolutely no end of the argument. Suddenly, the class was divided into two groups and debate became emotionally charged. I sat back and enjoyed their arguments. The girl said it is ultimately the woman who makes the man. She is more powerful, has great endurance for pain, and is better manager as the man. All successful men have backed by a supportive woman. Without her help, a man cannot achieve anything. The boys laughed at this. The woman will always be behind her, never in front. How many women have got the Nobel Prize? A woman's brain weighs less than men. I have to interfere here to say that there is absolutely no correlation between the weight of the brain. The boys looked upset war. My comment. Men starts war. Wars happen because of men. Look at what happened because of the Helen of the Troy, Draupadi or Sita. The foolish arguments continued for a long time. Neither of the two groups were ready to accept reality. Now I realized I had to step in. I said, I will tell you a story, listen to it and decide who is great. Immediately there was a pin drop silence. A long time ago there were two kings. One ruled over Kashi and other ruled over Kosal. They did not like each other. Once both kings were traveling and they met. They were on their chariot. The road was small and only one chariot could pass at one time. Unfortunately, both chariots reached that spot at same time. They stood facing each other. Which chariot would pass first? The king refused to talk each other, so their charioteers started talking. My Kashi charioteer said, my king has 10,000 soldiers. Kosala charioteer replied, my king also has 10,000 soldiers. My king has 200 elephants. So does my king. My king owns 10 lakh acre of fertile land. So does mine. The argument carried on. It was surprising that both kings had same thing. The Kosal charioteer said, my king punishes bad people, dislikes lazy people and uses his money for the betterment of the kingdom. The Kashi charioteer replied, my king makes bad people better human beings, makes lazy person work hard and uses his money for betterment of poor people. When the king of Kosal heard this, he told the charioteer, he is a better human being than me. I must become his friend. Give way to their charioteer. When the king of Kashi heard this, he got down and embraced the king of Kosal. Thus their enmity ended and they became friends. I looked at my students and said, today I will tell you a secret. I usually tell this at the end of the course in the last class. In real life, men and women are not opponents, they are the two wheels of the chariot. There is nothing good about one and bad about another. Both should possess good quality. A person gets known by the quality he or she possesses, not by the gender. That is decided by God. I am teaching you computer science today, but you will learn more in real life. Technology changes every day, and good books are always there in the market. What I am teaching is also how to be a good human being. These values had not been prescribed in any syllabus, nor they will come up in exams. But these are essential qualities you need to do well in life. When you become older, you should remember that there was a teacher who taught you the values of life along with your first knowledge of computer science. You must then teach your children these same values with as much and love and affection. The class ended that day with my students and gathered around me, all of us trying to hold back our tears. So friends, this was the end of the book, How I Taught My Grandmother to Read. Friends, please comment below the video next book's audiobook you want. Please give your opinion in the YouTube polls. Happy learning and happy reading.